One of the things I've come to appreciate about a psyop on the world stage, as sophisticated as they become, is the multiple onion layers, if you want to call them onion layers. Yeah, they are onion layers, needing peeled back. Whenever these incidents go live, one can expect to find crisis actors mixed among real flesh and blood people. And I think that's key. There are agents on the ground, a wreckage trail of media propaganda in the wake of the event, as well as hoaxes, script rewrites, cover-ups, the usual patsies, all of which are intended to enhance the psychodrama, which, as I've stated for several years now, is magic, real magic. It goes all the way back to ancient Babylon. And that's how you change people's thinking, by putting them through an emotional crisis and having them survive on the other end. And you can mold and think them social engineering on a worldwide scale. But that is not to say that there are not real victims either. And if so, then at the end of the day, an ended or debilitated life is just as valued as a non-scripted, non-conspiratorial event, if that makes any sense. Now, if you're new here and aren't certain what you've gotten yourselves into, because there's a lot of different opinions floating out there, I do have a long-standing history of investigating many of these types of events and concluding that they are staged, though certainly not all of them, and of course, the stage ones are perpetrated by actors. So as I said, staged or not, there's going to be actors all throughout. That's just the world we live in. You can't avoid that. They're hoaxes. With the latest event, however, the talking points of tonight, I've taken a different approach. Interestingly enough, and almost ironically, many liberals, and in fact, liberal controllers in the media, are crying hoax on the Trump assassination attempt. And these are the same individuals who were like, boo-hoo, cry me a river if you said Sandy Hook was a hoax. And they're like, think about the children and the babies and the parents and all this kind of stuff, right? But now all of a sudden you have a situation that didn't go in their favor, and you see this even coming from the feds. Oh, it's a hoax. Now that this has me concluding or leading me to realize that I made the right decision in going with my gut instincts and saying, hopefully objectively, that from the beginning, those were real bullets buzzing past the grandstands until proven otherwise. In fact, if you watched the last video that we did, I've got the whole band together here. Joining me tonight is Devin Branch, John Q. Adams, Graham, and hopefully soon we're going to have Cyber in here, or Matthew as he's known. You see a little black bar over there. He's missing in action. He should be showing up shortly. We do have a seat reserved for him at the table. And from the beginning, or at least the last time that we came together, for me, it was all about the bullet, the blood, and the ear. And speaking of which, here he is right now. Welcome, Matthew. We're just getting started. So what I did when we went live a couple weeks ago, a couple of days after the assassination attempt, I published the first iteration of my Trump paper. It was 8 pages at that time. By the time we went live 2 weeks ago, or a week and a half ago, it was around 15 pages. It's up to 70 pages now. What I'm going to do tonight, I invited them all back on for commentary. I'm going to be taking you through this. I will not be reading you through it. I'll just be taking you through it, looking at the different facets. And one of the things I wanted to do, one of the reasons I wanted to do this immediately is because I've been through enough of these staged events that all this information is coming at you, that if you don't document it right then and there that week, it's gone, because it's going to get just piled at the bottom of the waste bin. And I wanted to put in here the misdirection as well, the false information, the fake news. I want to put everything in there because that is what a psyop is. It is just a war of information. Hence, InfoWars, the infamous InfoWars. It's a true title. So let's get right into this. And thank you everyone for being here, coming back again. Hopefully we'll have a good discussion tonight. I know we will. So right here, starting out, you can kind of see, I just linked, if you can follow this paper underneath this video. And I put here, just for your consideration to look at, a lot of the papers that I have written, the investigative papers showing different, what I believe to be hoaxes in history. The Donner Party, the sinking of the Titanic, I believe that was a hoax. I believe it actually went to Nova Scotia. I do not believe in the ship swap theory. It literally just went to Nova Scotia. The Temple Mount hoax. There's Sandy Hook, And of course, the Boston bombing, which was the sequel to Sandy Hook, same cast and crew. Osama bin Laden, the Manson murders, I believe that was a hoax. Jim Morrison, that was a whole intel project, of course, connected to the Vietnam War, all sorts of stuff. The JFK assassination, that's a whole can of worms. Hayden Ashbury, Patty Hearst, Jonestown, the Chicago World Fair, Paul McCartney. I don't believe Paul actually died and was swapped, by the way. I believe it was an MK Ultra ceremony. George Reeves, the atomic bomb, Nancy Kerrigan, Vanilla Ice, Woodstock, and bummer. This looks like it's actually not the latest draft, whatever. Because I can just see there that I swapped out Anne Heche for the Black Dahlia. So I know tonight I'm not going through the latest draft. That's okay. So a few things to consider here. We see that in Central Park, New York City, there was the mysterious Donald Trump tombstone that was placed there, and it has his birth date, missing date of death. The idea here is that there was a desire to have that date of death on there sooner rather than later. It seems like they put that up to say he was a target. I cover a lot of dates in here. I might have done this in the last video, so I'm not going to necessarily cover it again. But I did want to cover the infamous Illuminati card. And there's really a couple of them, and everybody here knows about it. As soon as you start talking about this, I have found with the hoax crowd, because I've written a lot of hoax papers, they start just doing the same things over and over again. They'll say the world is a matrix, the world is a stage. Why don't you get this? And they slap some Illuminati card down on you, and it's like, okay, well, what does that explain? Clearly, I am under the impression that is Donald Trump. I don't know how you guys feel about this. I think that's a Trump card right there. But one thing that I've talked a lot about is time travel. And I do find this really fascinating. If you look at my report on Back to the Future, the trilogy, as actual time travel movies, meaning that the time travel existed before the movies were made. And my idea is that when you look at the 9/11 predictive programming, you can go all the way back to the 1970s, and you can start seeing them just putting this out here, this ceremony that was going to happen with the destruction of the World Trade Centers. And the precision of it was so perfectly executed. I'm of the opinion, or at least my thesis at this point, is that it wasn't just that they were telling you this is what we're going to do. In a way, they were telling us this has already happened. Meaning, like, 9/11 happened before I was born. I was born in 1980. So admit that 9/11 happened before I was born, if you guys can follow. And the idea with the Back to the Future films is that we see, I think I mentioned this in our last video, guys, you see, Biff Tannen, the Donald Trump character. And of course, everyone is familiar with the plot. Marty McFly goes back to an alternate 1985 from the future. And it's basically a representation of Donald Trump. How many times in these movies do you see Biff Tannen, thrown into the manure, right? Like the manure is coming out of his mouth and all. I mean, they couldn't do it enough. And you get this idea that they really hated Trump. And they're smacking him with car doors. I mean, this guy gets smacked around throughout the whole thing. And so the idea is that, yes, there is predictive programming, but it doesn't necessarily mean, in my opinion, when I'm looking at predictive programming, it could be foreknowledge is different than this is what we want to do. There could be these singularity events of this is happening and we want to do everything we can to stop it, but that doesn't mean that we want it. All right, just because we have a foreknowledge of it happening. Let's keep looking here. And I want to get you guys in on this. This was we talked about this last time. The Q drop was this 5/72, January 21st, 2018. The shot heard around the world, the Great Awakening, a week to remember Q. So in terms of predictive programming, two can play that game. I mean, you had the Illuminati card. You had Q coming out saying the same thing, that there was, this idea of the shot heard around the world. It was coming, week to remember. Seems like both sides or multiple sides were all gearing up for the same event. I guess the big question is, I'm curious for you guys, because I think we were talking about this, Graham, John Q, Dove, Matthew, about this idea of foreknowledge of the Trump assassination attempt. Do you guys what are your guys' thoughts on that? Do you guys believe that he knew when it was going to happen, or did they have a general vague idea of when it was happening? What are you guys' thoughts?
My thoughts are he may have known that it was going to be attempted. I don't think he knew the exact time and place because of his reaction. Unless he is just the most amazing actor ever, which he could be, I think his reaction was legit, and he was legit in shock afterwards. So I think while there could have been a possibility of, they knew it was going to come, I don't think it was something that they, would have planned for. I don't think he would have planned to turn his head at that exact second or anything like that. I could be wrong.
Devin Branch, Graham, Matthew, you guys have anything to
add? I would say that it's highly likely that he may have had foreknowledge that there was going to be an assassination attempt on his life. And I have a personal theory that I said last time that it is quite possible that this is one of those singularity events. Like, this is the thing that they couldn't see past to see what the result of this was going to be, because like we discussed it last time as well, that I mean, you have two drastically different outcomes that can come from this. And this is actually one of the topics that I think is fun to discuss in this is basically what happens next. Because we've seen things happen just in the week since that we would have probably never thought was possible, with even just President Biden dropping out of the race. And now things have shifted in that direction. And like, I don't think that ever would have happened if that bullet would have found its mark. Like, so like you can see things that are happening in real time now that they're potentially trying to adjust for not knowing what was going to be the outcome of this. So you can have contingency plans, but like the reaction to me on stage indicated that he didn't know that the events that were going to happen are the sequence of events that necessarily that were going to happen and how it was going to take place. Even if he had foreknowledge, the reaction was very legitimate to a realistic scenario. That being said, like, again, I think he potentially could have had foreknowledge that there was going to be an attempt on his life, just because people in those inner circles are so connected. Like,
Graham and Matthew, before I continue on, is there anything you wanted to jump in and add about that?
I agree. Nothing necessarily to add. It's speculation, to try to get to the detail of it, but I do feel like to some degree he did have some foreknowledge.
I would like to further add, like within the time travel theory, two things to consider is there's two different ways it could go. One, there's the foreknowledge that he would have, but the other side of it is it possible that God has this under control? Who has this under control? So much so that was hidden from him, that the ability to cover him in protection, even though if that was true through the time travel scenario, that he would be protected from even seeing that moment in time, because from him knowing might have created the problem. It might not have solved the problem. So even if it was shrouded, God's hand is in that. So hopefully that makes sense.
Is it possible, real quick, Matthew, for you to give us just a real quick summary of what, or either John or Graham or whoever, give us a real quick summary of what exactly the time travel theory with all of this is? Because I'm not sure I've heard that in its entirety.
The time travel scenario involves Trump being in Cheyenne Mountain and then being fed a scenario, I believe it's a day ahead of time. And every day before that day in a continued basis, so that he would be the expert in everything, especially concerning the Sun Tzu's Art of War. John, can you go into that a little further?
Yeah. There's several theories, one of which is kind of just, the Q team has the looking glass and they use the looking glass for things. The other one is that there is actual time travel. And if you look up Jetson White on Rumble or YouTube, he's on Rumble or YouTube, Jetson White, you'll find his theory that he's gone through. It's very interesting. But basically his theory is that there are different Trumps, because when Trump was read into everything, he then went back in time one day, brought back that self to the present. Then they sent one of those Trumps, like, you know, into the future, and then he can come back and report to the present Trump what's going on. So it's interesting. I think there may have been like several different Trumps that they sent into the future and come back. And there's some compelling evidence. I mean, if you look at Judson White's videos, you know, he shows how there are definitely, it seems very much like there are different Trumps in the crowd. It could be doubles, but like, why would they put another Trump in the crowd? One looks very older, much older, you know, another one looks a little bit older. So yeah, some interesting stuff. I wanted to touch on something interesting about this Q drop, Noel, if you could scroll back up to 572 there. So this was posted on January 21st of 2018, but what's really interesting is on July 13th of 2024, that's when the assassination attempt happened. And on July 13th, that date of July 13th, there are no Q deltas, meaning Q never posted on July 13th. But on July 14th, Q posted two of the posts that Q posted on July 14th of 2019. One of them says The Great Awakening, and then the next one, and that's it. That's all it says is The Great Awakening. And then 4 posts later, another post that says A Week to Remember, and that's it. So it's, you know, it's pretty interesting given that Q was silent on July 13th, but then he has the next 2 lines the very next day.
So I want to talk really quickly about singularity events, and at least my idea on singularity events. I believe that these happen all throughout history, and we call them resets for a reason. Now, resets could be done by our controllers, though I believe they can also be orchestrated by Yah, which means they're out of our controller's hands. A great example of a reset would be the collapse of Rome. And we could all argue when that was. I think that 536, the fire reset, I've done a lot of work on that, is a good contender for an event that they knew it was coming. They couldn't do anything about it. And, you know, my research in the Mandela effect has led me to the same conclusion, that these variations we're seeing is actually perhaps multiple scenarios, timelines kind of coming together. Basically, all roads, you've heard the saying, all roads lead to Rome. It's basically like all roads are leading to what is coming. And we don't really know what's coming, but that's kind of my idea on that. So interestingly enough, and I'll be, I think, talking more about Singularity and Project Looking Glass again. I did a couple years ago, but I think it's a good time to talk about it again in the coming weeks. Is there's one of the last Stephen King books I read when I was still, you know, devouring all this stuff, you know, 10 plus years ago, was 6/23/63. And that was, of course, the John F. Kennedy assassination. And it's an interesting story about a man in the present who he can't figure out why he goes to his favorite burger joint and the burgers taste amazing, unlike any other meat out there. And he comes to learn that the guy running the place actually has a portal in his back room that actually opens up to the same day at any given, whenever you go, it opens up the same day in like 1959 or 1960 or something like that. And so that's why he keeps the prices so low. He goes back and buys the meat from back then and cooks it. And so he concocts a plan to go back and stop the Kennedy administration or the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And what's interesting about this book is that you come to learn that time is a security guard. It's actually a conscious being, the dimension of time, and that time knows better than the plots of men, and it will kind of basically veto human reasoning to do its own thing. And no matter how much they try to stop Kennedy from being assassinated, time itself would keep coming in and stopping to bring the singularity event. Now, to give it away for those, go la 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 for the next minute if you don't want to hear the ending to the story, is that eventually this guy does manage to stop the Kennedy assassination. I think, if I recall right, he went with the classic Patsy scenario, oddly enough. But he stops it, and then he goes back to the future. and he realizes that he's entered into this like apocalyptic future where Richard M. Nixon is still president. He's the emperor of the world. Oddly enough, I didn't even get it back then, but I think it was another Back to the Future scenario. He was talking about Donald Trump. He was talking about this idea that time has skewed into this parallel we're not supposed to be in. And there's this evil dictator. I think that the stand-in for Richard Nixon is Donald Trump. So something to think about and how they're perceiving, like they want to get back to the way things were, and we've skewed into this alternate timeline. But on the flip, and that's Orwellian language, on the flip, we're seeing in this scenario, it is very possible that we're seeing the singularity, time as a conscious construct coming and saying, nope, you're not, call it the Matrix if you want, right? Fine. Just like Keanu Reeves, stopping bullets, right? But it's basically saying, nope, this is not going to happen today. So something to think about. Let's keep
looking. Hey, Noel.
Yes.
3 questions on the topic in quick succession. 1, what Stephen King book was that?
It's called 11/23/63. I think it's just the date of the assassination.
Okay.
It's like 900. It's like 900 pages. It's a long read, but anyways.
Oh, that's nothing if you ever read Brandon Sanderson. So
now that would have been 11/22/63.
Oh,
11/22/63.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Secondly, how are you under the assumption that Project Looking Glass is Kosolev mirrors? Is that your thought process? Is the use of Kosolev mirrors the technology that was designed during the Cold War, basically using sacred geometry? You bend metal into a sacred geometrical shape, and a person with quote unquote psychic abilities can sit inside of it and project themselves into different time things and view things. Is because Kosolev mirrors were used by both Russia and the United States in Project Looking Glass, from the research I was able to do. So, and it's interesting, and I just wanted to know if that was where you were under the understanding, if that's what Looking Glass was using.
Yeah, I don't really know what they're doing. I mean, we get different pieces of information about it. There's been a few whistleblowers that come out. Some are less trustworthy than others. The thing is that I have seen enough of this scrying mirror throughout history in different texts, ancient texts, this idea that this does exist, that they're able to look and see the different outcomes. A great one is I gave a presentation 3 weeks ago, or 3 or 4 weeks ago, on the Legend of Prester John, and in his letter, and we could all come up to whatever the conclusion is of this letter. And I gave a few different scenarios, but in the letter, it does have a knowledge of a mirror where he was able to look into it and see all possible outcomes and how he could not be usurped for that reason. So I don't know. At the end of the day, I don't know what the technology is. I don't really know what's going on. That's something maybe I need to dig back into and look at the different options out there. What are your thoughts?
I personally think it's Kosolev mirrors, because there's a lot of data surrounding them and how they work, and the way that the geometry is able to allow them to, because basically, like, every angle that a person would look at from inside a Kosolev mirror, they would see themselves reflected back at it. And then if they learn to focus their mind and thoughts the correct ways, they could project to basically anywhere that they wanted to. They just had to focus their mind on that thing and they could go there, which is basically an advanced form of astral projection, which I see the science behind astral projection and basically removing your body from your spirit. And there's been a lot of documented evidence that is in fact a real thing. So I could see how it's attached to that sacred geometry and allowing you to project yourself through time, as not physically, obviously, but your spirit would be able to move back and forth through time. And I'm also curious on your thoughts as to being, there's obviously truth hidden in fiction most of the time. And I've seen that concept raised too many times. Like they did it in the television production of The Umbrella Academy, where they went back and changed the JFK assassination. I've seen that point in history referenced way too many times to believe that's not a singularity point in history, for them to have messed around with it and different timelines branched off of it. But it seems like time has that flux to it. So your thoughts on whether time itself as a living entity is potentially one of the spirits of God? Like,
Well, that's that. Okay. Well, right. What you said right there. I mean, I can't respond to that because I have never once put a thought into, is time an entity of one of the spirits of Yah? It's a fascinating idea. I would have to look into that before saying something, and then, somebody saying somewhere else, did you hear what Noel just said? I don't see why not. I mean, you're asking me the question, maybe you have a thought on it.
Well, it seems to me that there's other transcendent characteristics to God, in the sense that, like, the Ruach HaKodesh, right, is the spirit, it's the Holy Spirit, or spirit of wisdom. We've seen reference. We see the spirit of truth, wisdom. Like, we see all these different aspects of God, and we see this.
And Chokmah, of course, that's a Hebrew word for wisdom, is one of the seven spirits, and the other one is Yahweh, or Yahweh is one of the other seven spirits. So yeah, definitely.
So it's just interesting to look at the construct that it is another form of will being bent, or the universe being bent to God's will, in the fact that there are certain ways that he will allow you to manipulate the creation, but there are certain points it's like, no, like this is the plan. This is the plan that the world, you can't get around this. So whatever instrument he would choose to be the piece of that, like I would argue that, like, that Babylon, the capture of Israel, would be another one. Like, you're not getting around that. Like, that's going to happen because it's prophetic. It needs to happen, and it's a thing that's structured in the timeline that you're not going to be able to bend around. Like, even if they were using magicians and scrying mirrors or whatever before that to see that event, I would imagine that was another, like, Nebuchadnezzar coming in and taking Babylon, and the whole thing that he did with Nebuchadnezzar and humbling him and bringing him back into his will. That's another aspect of a time event, or that they weren't going to get around, that needed to happen. So the things that happened before or after that, maybe they could adjust, and God allowed that to adjust, but that specific event, it's set in stone. So, like, that's how I see these type of events happen.
Yeah, it's security measures. It's similar to the idea when we're talking about the flat, motionless plane, we have a solid firmament over us that is a protective barrier to keep people out of the heavens. It's in the same way we have, we call it the ice wall, or the Antarctica, or whatever it is. We have these barriers that we can't physically cross, right? Or even the ocean, right? You can go so far down the ocean, and then they found that there's this other water at the very bottom that's so thick you can't penetrate that either. Or you can only dig, how far can you dig into the ground? It's not very deep. It's a certain amount of mileage, and they're like, we can't go any deeper than that. So it's the same way with time. And I remember we talked about this last time, Matthew, when you were on, that was it John, give me his name again.
John Titter.
Yeah, John Teeter. That he said the same thing, that you can't, like, he actually, interestingly enough, brought up the Middle Ages. I thought that was really interesting. He said you can't go back to the Dark Ages. He said you can only go back like 30 years safely without getting too much variance or whatever. And it seems like within time there's even these protective boundaries that you can't cross, and that's how Yah just keeps everything locked in place. All right, well, let's keep going back on this. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so, like, considering, like, you can't go back to the Dark Ages, isn't that convenient if that's where, like, the reign of Christ was?
Exactly, yeah.
Because that's protection right there. That's protecting the reign, and I don't know, there might be something there.
So I want to just go over really quickly Doug Mill's photo. If you guys did tune in last time, I don't want to go over it all again, because for me and John Q, Devin Branch, Graham, Matthew, they were all there. We were all discussing this when it happened. I'm one of those guys, like, show me the wound. I need to see the wound. I need to see the order of events. And there was a series of shots that went off. There was 1, 2, 3, and then there was like a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There might have been a ninth, and then you wait about 10 seconds, and then there's a 10th one, right? And in those first 3, it's actually more slow and rhythmic than the others, where it's just rapid fire. It's just like a boom, 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 like that. It's really quick. But when it happens, this is where I really struggle with the idea of a 78-year-old man being this precise of an actor, even though if he came from WWE or whatever. You clearly see him flinch with the first, You see him putting his ear up with the second. By the time the third hits, he's looking at it. You can clearly see the blood. He drops, right? But I wanted to look at this photo really quickly. This comes from the photographer Doug Mills, and I started digging into him. Let's see if I can pull it up here. I'll just skip all these because we did cover this. And, you know, people are going to say fake blood, fake, you know, again, though, it's like, well, the blood appears before he drops. You could see the cut, all that kind of stuff. So for those who are claiming that the ear was cut and then there was blood, no, the blood actually appeared before he dropped. There's too much going on here that I have yet to see anyone give a satisfactory explanation for why they think it is faked. Let me see if I can get down here. Just skip all this because we covered this last time. Okay, so there's the famous shot, right? Is this Photoshop? And I put the challenge out there. I know for a fact there are millions of people right now trying to disprove this. I have not seen one claim come up where they are able to prove that this is Photoshop. In fact, former FBI, I know FBI, but former FBI came out, did the work on this, and he said, no, this is a legitimate shot. He said it is. He said that even if you knew that there was a shot coming and you positioned yourself there, it is still a 1 in a million shot. He's saying that this could never be replicated in real time, or at least 1 in a million. Maybe if you got a million photographers right there, one of them could capture it. That's how hard this shot was. So the interesting thing about Doug Mills, I'll show you his photography. This guy he's legit. He is a very, very good photographer. I used to be a professional photographer. So stuff like this, I'm sorry to say, would have been a dream for me to be able to photograph this kind of stuff. But you can see him there. He's got the angles. He thinks very much in, you know, contrast, light, shadow, aperture, all that kind of stuff. I mean, to be able to get, I mean, lining up the eye there with the I know, John Q, you call it what do you call it? The club, is it 93 or something like that? Is what you call it?
Yeah, the
but
Cult 93. Yeah, yep.
Cult 93. Yep. And then you see, I mean, even to capture lightning like that in real time, get a silhouette. I mean, I was a wedding photographer for years. That would have been a dream to do. Never able to handle that. This guy is really good. Interestingly enough, though, and oh yeah, I'll just point out that. Oh yeah, look, here's our pictures from last time. Oh, there we are. Look at this. All right. The whole team's back together. So he used 30 frames. He used the 30 frames per second, 1/8,000th of a second was the shutter speed, which is combat speed. So a lot of people are calling foul on this. They're like, why does the guy have combat speed photography? It's not that it's never used. It is unlikely, but I will point out that, you know, this guy, he's got something for every occasion, right? And a lot of these photographers, you see them, they'll have 2 or 3 cameras on them with different shutter speeds and all that sort of stuff. Well, interestingly enough, oh my goodness. Oh, unfortunately, this is the old draft. That's why it's missing. I did a lot of work today, and apparently this isn't the updated one. Long story short, Doug Mills is the same guy that was in the second grade classroom when George W. Bush was reading The Pet Goat to the group. And it's kind of like Doug Mills goes all the way back to the Reagan administration. I mean, he was photographing Ronald and Nancy Reagan in their living room. He was there with George H.W. Bush when he shook hands with Gorbachev. He was there when he took that famous shot of Bill Clinton putting his arm around Arafat and the Prime Minister of Israel at that time. I can't remember the Prime Minister's name at that time. And I mean, this guy was like in it for a long time. And so it's so weird that someone with so much pedigree was chosen to sit in a second grade classroom of, I mean, I would just think like a photographer like that be like, really, you want me to go at a second grade classroom and get a picture of him reading children's literature? There were so many better things he could have done. And so it is interesting, right? And a lot of people are asking the question, was this guy kind of chosen to be there to get the kill shot? I can't answer that question. All right. We went over this last time as well. This is...
Before you move on from that topic, a question regarding the photographer in that whole scenario that you just laid out for us. The FBI agent or retired FBI agent that came forward and said, like, not a hoax, for lack of a better term. Like, that's a real shot. You can capture that shot. It's a 1 in a million shot, but you can capture that shot with a camera. What benefit does he have in saying that if it's a hoax?
Yeah, his name is Michael Harrigan. He's a retired FBI special agent. And I agree. The director of the FBI now is coming out, and they're kind of ping-ponging back and forth with the USSS director. The director of the FBI was like, well, you need to refer to the Secret Service report. And the Secret Service director, she was like, Kim Cheadle, she was like, oh, you need to, I'll refer you to that report, and they're just a bunch of clowns. But he came out and he's putting the question. He's like, well, maybe it was really a piece of shrapnel that went past his ear. It's like, well, okay, wait a second here. So now, you have the FBI that is clearly not bipartisan. Clearly, we know he's a mouthpiece for his bosses. And it's like, well, okay, you're saying that it could be a piece of shrapnel. So now we have a picture of a bullet whizzing past his ear at the precise second when the blood hits, and you're saying it's shrapnel. So the FBI has every reason to go out and say this is a fake picture. They could do it. They could throw Doug Mills under the bus if they want to. This guy could kiss his career goodbye. It's over 40 years of being, in the White House, photographing these presidents. This guy was photographing Bill Clinton jogging down the street to get Big Macs at McDonald's. This guy's been in it for a long time, and they're not doing that. So just want to point out, with this photo, everybody has a reason to disprove it, and I haven't seen anybody do it yet. It's not that hard to show composite imaging. There is software out there that will do it for you, and we've done it with NASA and so on and so forth.
I would just figure that of anybody, the FBI would have everything to gain from disproving it. Like,
yeah, I agree.
It doesn't make any sense to have them collaborate a photo of an attempted assassination if they want to say it's a hoax.
I hate to do this to you guys, but I'm going to have to pull up. I'm going to see if I can pull up my most recent draft. The reason being, I wish I would have checked this before we went live. The reason being is that I have a lot of information that I wanted to share tonight that is no longer in this draft. It doesn't happen to me very often, but apparently happens to me tonight. So everybody just stand by a second. Let's see if I can pull it up. I should be able to do it quickly enough. Okay. I think that did it there. I think this will be the most recent draft. We will find out if we can find iPet Goat or the Pet Goat picture. Let me scan through here. Okay, there's Doug Mills, and there it is. So here's more of his photography. You can see how far back he goes. Yes, it's staged with Nancy and Ronald Reagan. Clearly, I was a photographer. I know that photography is staged. All the photos are staged, no question about it. Even unless if he's jumping out of a bush, like a badass there, like a punk, to get Bill Clinton. I made the joke because he used to, I guess, run to get McDonald's every morning or something like that, which defeated the purpose of jogging. But here, there it is right there, the pet goat. So Doug Mills, same guy who got the bullet shot. He got two of the most probably famous photos of the 21st century. This one guy. All right. So let me go on now that I have there's the FBI director, of course, putting the his name is Christopher Wray, putting the bullet into question. There's our mug again.
Wasn't there a Q drop that we talked about earlier in the week that you and Matthew could talk about, John, with that involved Ray? Unless you want to talk about that at a different point, Noel. I just heard you say something in my.
Yeah, there is Q drops that say trust Ray, trust Sessions. There's a couple trust Kansas. Anons don't necessarily just take Q at his word or their word, though, because Q taught them to conduct research and think on them for themselves, not to just blindly trust, to question everything, including Q. And Q themselves said that disinformation and misinformation is necessary because the enemy also reads our boards.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit about the shooter. I think we're all under the conclusion, all in agreement, that is not Thomas Matthew Crooks. I am not convinced that Thomas Matthew Crooks was even there that day. He might have been off on a beach wearing his two-piece, wiggling his toes in the sand, drinking from a rum out of a coconut with one of those little umbrellas on top. Anyways, this right here, we'll talk about who this is, but this is clearly, we can see that it's a Photoshop picture. Now, for comparison, you can see the shooter up here on the slopey roof. You can see the blood trickling down. At this point, maybe it's true that maybe his gun was moved by the detectives later, because maybe the gun is right next to him at this point. In other photos, you can see it removed like 4 or 5 feet away from him, which is really weird. But right here, you can clearly see the grass right behind him. You could see it was photoshopped in. Like, this is, if you were taking, there's no roof behind him. There should be a roof behind him. So clearly this is a photoshopped image. Even his ear doesn't look right. I mean, look at his ear. Like, it's just, nobody's ear looks like that. That's just wrong on so many levels. Whoever did that. And of course, I'm under the impression that one of the reasons when the government hoaxes us is because it's actually hard to find good talent that is willing to lie. There are people willing to lie, but I don't think they're necessarily good talent, and that's why they get exposed so many times. So there's, of course, Thomas Crooks tied in with BlackRock. Again, I don't even think he was there on that day. We see that he had 2 therapists for a father, 2 therapists for parents, a father and a mother. Classic daddy mommy MK Ultra scenario. I don't think he was. I think. Yeah. Okay. So this came up, and we see that Thomas Matthew Crooks apparently could have been a tranny. Now, I'm going to point out that the person who did put this out, he put in the original, I think this was 4chan. Is that where it came out? Let me check. Not sure where it came out, but it's someone who is anonymous, and he basically, somebody asked, "You sure that's the same guy?" And he said, "Not really, but spreading rumors is fun, and everybody hates NATO." Okay, so this guy right now is reading like a government troll. Like, this guy looks like he's shilling for the government. He's a troll. And we're all supposed to say this is fake news, that Thomas Matthew Crooks is not not dressing up as trans. I disagree. I think that they can drop this information out there just to discredit it. I think that's very, very possible. We saw them scrub his social media. There have been a few things that have surfaced, very, very little, but he basically has no footprint in social media, 20-year-old, which is highly, highly irregular. And I would say, I don't know, I question whether that's possible in this day and age for anyone born after 2004. I think that this could possibly be him, or, as I will show you, actually the person playing Thomas Matthew Crooks, because I think Thomas Matthew Crooks is a different person than this. I think the person playing him, this could be him. And I think that they dropped this information just to discredit it. So let's keep looking. And this was interesting. It came up. We saw the Thomas Matthew Crooks connections via cell phones. And what somebody did is they took the mobile ad data of a number of cell phones that entered his house, and then they tracked it where it went immediately afterwards. And we could see that it went right here to Washington, D.C. I know exactly where this is, over at Gallery Place in 7th Street Northwest. It's within very close walking distance to the FBI headquarters and other such places. And it is interesting, the people who were coming and going out of his house, going to Washington, D.C., it screams MK Ultra handler situation. Again, though, I think that there are peels of the onion to this. I do not believe that he actually was there that day. I see no evidence for it. Let's put it that way. We saw immediately that he had crisis actors coming in, right? I said this last time. We'd seen the media just, lo and behold, an old high school classmate comes walking down the street, walks up to the camera, of course, and a little bit less believable than Sandy Hook, by the way. And saying, he was a loner. He was a loner. And they keep pushing that, right? He was the lone gunman, the lone gunman over and over again. I don't believe any of it. All right. So let's talk about this, guys. We're going to start talking about actually, no, we're not there yet. So we had multiple witnesses talking about the very weird security that day. This guy, Robert Philpott, said he went to multiple Trump rallies, and this was the first where he could look around and look at the rooftops and they were bare and empty and be like, what's going on? Because he had never been to a Trump rally before that wasn't just snipers on every single roof looking down at them. You guys are free to jump in anytime. You guys are all aware of this guy by now, talking about how there was a large number of people, and we have video documentations of this, yelling that they saw the shooter up on the sloped roof. There is footage has emerged of him doing like a caterpillar crawl wiggle going up the roof, and they're yelling at police. We see his gun, he's up there, and they're running around like chickens with their heads sawed off. Nobody knows what to do. We came to learn that the police and the Secret Service were apparently on different radio calls, so they couldn't communicate with each other, which was very brilliant. Okay, we don't need to look at that. This was interesting that came up. These pictures of the second story window here that was open, of course, and it overlooked the building. We know that there were police in there and snipers and such, but this is actually a view of it. I took the screenshots looking out through that open window, and this looks directly out here to the left, but if you scan to the right, you see the whole building. You would have seen where he was. So if they had a guy stationed there, they would have seen the whole thing. So again, clearly it's stacking up that he was clearly intended to be there. All right, so this is the famous shot of Thomas Matthew Crooks. The final shot that was snapped of him as he's apparently scouting out the town. He's looking like he's, strutting his stuff there, kind of like modeling for the camera.
Isn't it interesting though that doesn't, but it doesn't seem to match, like the clothes he's wearing or anything. They don't even seem to match what he was shot in. So, that photo could have been taken anywhere.
It could have, but this is what's interesting. This guy named Jew Gazing came. He's a Twitter user, total just a jerk off clown. He's a prankster, hoaxer, probably shilling for the .gov White House, and he came out and he said, let me say, quote his. If you have the paper, you can be linked to the actual video, but he says, "My name is Thomas Matthew Crooks. I hate Republicans. I hate Trump. And guess what?" And then he leans in, kind of like the Riddler from Batman. He says, "You got the wrong guy." So he's basically saying that he is Thomas Matthew Crooks. Now, again, he's pranking us, right? The interesting thing here is that the photo being circulated on the internet doesn't know the difference. If you look up Thomas Matthew Crooks, you're going to get this photo. This is Jew Gazer. All right. Well, what's interesting is that he looks exactly like the photo of the guy on the grounds. And so again, I'm stating the possibility that this is what happens in these hoaxes, where they drop this information to discredit it. Because if he didn't come out and say that, somebody else would first. So he drops it and he's like, "Guess what, guys? I'm Thomas Matthew Crooks." Everyone's like, "Oh, you're joking. Ha, 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 ha." That kind of thing. But that's him. In my opinion, this definitely is him. And it's kind of like if you do on the like a web search on like the atomic bomb in Japan, and you'll find other cities that, like, Google can't tell the difference between the nuked versus the non-nuke cities. Same thing. They can't tell the difference, and they will tell you this is Thomas Matthew Crooks. Clearly it's not. So something is going on here. And this is where I'm stating that I am not convinced that Thomas Matthew Crooks, this fictional character, they created this whole thing around him. He's probably not on social media because he probably doesn't exist. He's just a fictional character. He was made up. And go ahead.
I would totally agree with that. I don't know if you're going to get to this, but you have the mysterious man in the gray suit who goes up on the roof.
Yes.
It's like, "Hey, send all your pictures to this particular agency, this particular phone number." It was, I think it was Senator Johnson or whoever. No, it was, he's a congressman. He's a former Navy SEAL. He when he went up there, that was him that took that video from the window where they clearly could have seen where this shooter was.
Yeah.
He talked about during the hearing, he talked about how when the FBI or when he went to their house, it was completely clean, no silverware. Like, yeah, this guy, the Thomas Matthew Crooks character is completely made up in my opinion as well.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And mommy and daddy, which is fake mommy, the whole thing. Yeah. I mean, the whole story about how, like, you know, they were so concerned about him earlier that day, and they called the police station to report him, you know, doing a wellness check on their son. Oh, never mind. He just went down to Home Depot to get a ladder. And we'll get into this. Apparently he had 3 vehicles. He had a white van, he had his car in the parking lot, and then he had a bicycle. I don't know if he put the bicycle in the white van or the back of the car, and where he put the ladder. And, you know, he's hauling his ladder. He's either walking or riding his, it gets crazy. So let's keep looking at all what they're telling us here. Of course, there's John Q, you're the one that showed me this. And there's from the video clip of showing a police officer walking around the sloped building. I have a lot of questions about whether a police officer actually went up to the police building. I have seen 3 different accounts. I have seen, let me see if I can find this here. I saw one where the shooter pointed a gun at him and he retreated. I saw another account where he was being held up by another police officer and ducked. And I saw another one where he fell off the roof. So I'm not really sure. I'm calling BS on them. I don't really know what to believe. I feel like the media was just kind of improvising on that. We have yet to see that I have seen video footage emerge of a police officer on that roof. We do have video footage leading up to the shooting of the shooter on the roof. We have this right here from TMZ.
Real quick. Yeah. If you go back up to that shooter on the roof photo, someone, I forget who it was, but someone was doing some analysis on how nice and clean and shiny his hair is in this photo compared to the supposed photo of Thomas Matthew Crooks. He's like crawling along on the ground, and he doesn't, you know, his hair, it looks like he hasn't showered in a week.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, you know what? I didn't even pick up on that. But right here, right? Is that what you're looking at?
Yeah.
Also, can we point out the obvious difference in hair color here? Like, that guy has dark, dirty blonde hair. And if you look at the guy that's standing or laying down on the roof there, like, his clearly brunette. Like, it's not the same color hair.
Yep.
You're right.
And like, there's no wave in his hair. Like, there's no, like, it's not the same guy. The profile's different. Like, everything's different about it. Like, and I've yet to see a picture of a ladder leaning up against a roof that he supposedly had. Like, what motivation? Do you have one? I haven't seen one yet. So,
I might have passed it up. Let me scan through here, or maybe I
wasn't the original story that he popped up out of the air vents. I'm pretty sure. Am I crazy for remembering that?
The original story
right there where you have the yellow square around the air vents. Yeah.
Right. So this was the original story. However, there is a photo that surfaced that is somewhere in my report where it's cropped off here. You don't see it. But if you keep going to stage right, on the other side of this door, there is like a little ladder that was put there, but it's still not tall enough. I think he only got a 6-foot ladder. Like a 6-foot ladder, you can't climb up on a roof. You'd have to jump, I guess. Maybe he jumped up, but I don't know what he was planning to do with 6-foot ladder. The ladder paint the side of the slopey roof building. I don't really know. So if I find it, I'll let you know. But I did see a photo that has emerged. I don't know if they later propped it there or what.
No, I saw something that it was a 5-foot ladder, and that there was some kind of a little utility storage shed next to the building that was a little bit lower roof. And he basically used the ladder to get on top of that, and then climbed from there on top of the roof. But the little storage shed thing was like a cheap plastic top that wouldn't support the weight of a person. So suspicious either way.
This is what I was showing you earlier. And again, it could be an order of events. We see the body of the shooter, and the gun is way over here. I mean, this is assuming he's like, doesn't matter if he's 5'5" or 6 foot. It's further than his body distance. So it's like 10 feet away from him almost. And again, I don't know if somebody tampered with the evidence, or, a crime scene, and they went and they moved the gun, which I would think you're not supposed to do, but it's just a very weird photo. Now, it's not a high resolution. You can see the pink stuff of the blood running down here. So I just want to point that out. There are other photos where you can see clear of the blood, but the gun is very strange. Okay, let's talk about Maxwell Yearick. And this appears to be the closest resemblance of the guy on the roof, Maxwell Yearick. It is strange that, it appears to be a photoshopped picture. So this is what I'm talking about. There's like layers and layers of this, and it's hard to know what to really believe. The first we see Maxwell Yearick is back in April 13th, 2016. It says Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania there. That is actually not completely accurate. It's actually Butler. He was in Butler in 2016. That's where he arrived on the world stage. His crime spree actually began in at the age of 17 when he stole cash and merchandise from a convenience store. And so it is interesting that at the 2016 arrest, he assaulted an elderly woman wearing a MAGA hat sticker on her car. So she wasn't even wearing a MAGA hat. It was just a sticker on her car. And then, of course, he was there to protest police brutality. So, it's just, yeah. Okay. So he's there he basically wants to protest police brutality so that he can continue beating on people and leading, I'll say fascism. I mean, very fascist. And they'd like to project this onto others, how fascist others are, when in fact they have those tactics. And of course, the commie agenda. So here's a list from that time, Maxwell Yearick became a serial, he took the nationwide commie tour, and he covered all the bases of everything in the media he was supposed to protest. We should see him in Washington, D.C. Interesting thing about that one is that he appears to have organized that event. It was a big one. So this guy is serious, boots on the ground. This is an agent. This guy is working for George Soros. He is financed by him. No, I don't have a paycheck from George Soros, but you can see here he did the national tour: Washington, D.C., Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington, Minneapolis, Chicago, New York City, Los Angeles, Atlanta, Boston. The guy got around, and it was everything from anti-white supremacy rally, women's right march, of course, I guess whoever was the tranny crooks would fit in that one nowadays, since they can't define what a woman or a man is at these women's rights march. He was at environmental. You see, one was, what was it? It was George Floyd. He even did George Floyd. So this guy was on top of everything. But never mind the fact that, the DNA sample came back, said it was Thomas Matthew Crooks in a question. It doesn't matter how much it looks like a Yearick. It doesn't matter, right? So, but then it gets weirder, because we see this white van. This white van was parked down a residential street. The person who lived in front of the house, who saw this white van, he didn't think much about it. But he said that the street was so packed, there was no parking spots. It was the last one. And then he gets home from the rally and he sees the feds out there basically inspecting it and towing it away. It had apparently bombs in it or some sort of explosives. And it had Arizona plates. Now, the story going around is that it was a rental, and that Thomas Matthew Crooks rented a van with Arizona plates. What rental company rents vans that are beat up clunkers like that? It's like missing the paint in the background, probably has cracked windows. I mean, this is low resolution, and it's looking bad in low resolution. I mean, this thing had to be a mess. That bumper was probably almost falling off. The wheels are probably crooked. I mean, this thing was a mess. Now, I did look, and in the state of Pennsylvania, a 20-year-old under Hertz, I think, could rent. However, Enterprise, most others, they say 25 or older. The thing is, though, is that Thomas Matthew Crooks is said to have driven a Honda Sonata, and they're all Japanese. It's all Japanese to me, but so it's like, well, how many cars did this guy have? We haven't gotten to the bicycle yet. He apparently had a bicycle, he had a Honda Sonata, and he had a white van. We don't hear anything about the white van in the media. So there's right there the bike that is supposedly Thomas Matthew Crooks that he parked there. He went right past security or whatever with his ladder and his rangefinder. No questions asked. Oh yeah, there you go, Graham. 5 feet ladder. I said it was 6 feet, but in here it does say 5 feet. And there is a picture from another angle, and we see somebody being arrested, and he is wearing a gray shirt. We can't really see his shorts, but in another picture, we do see that there are the same shorts that does look like the shooter. Now here, I think he has a white baseball cap on, but it does seem to match this guy and maybe this guy. I don't really know. I don't know if they're wearing the same shirts or not. It's an interesting scene. You see the police officer hounding him down. So it looks like there was somebody apprehended. This white van, we do know that Maxwell's father, Roger, lived in Arizona. He bought this very type of car. It is a GMC Safari 1999. And there it is. That may be the van right there. We don't really know what that is, but there's something parked under the water tower, big old white thing. We don't know what it was. So we don't know if it was connected with the van or not. Now you can see here that Maxwell Yearick looks a lot like the shooter, whereas Thomas Matthew Crooks looks nothing like the corpse that they showed us. So clearly, again, Thomas Matthew Crooks is not the guy. He wasn't there, invented character. And yeah, well, it gets deeper than that because we get these guys, Keenan Hooper and Lisa, I guess, Cooler. I don't really know how to pronounce that. All three of these individuals we see right there. That is Maxwell right there. And then we got Keenan Hooper and Lisa. Now, I have not seen evidence that Lisa was at this event, but we do see Keenan Hooper at this event. Why is that interesting? Because all three of them were arrested in 2016 at the original Butler protest, the confrontation that happened. So the way it went down on April 13th, 2016 is that, yes.
Did you notice that all three of them have almost identical noses?
Well, they're kind of close, aren't they?
I mean, real close. It's kind of weird.
They
That's
do.
the first thing I
related.
noticed.
Yeah, they do look like they could be related.
And of course, I'm saying that they're agent provocateurs. These guys are shilling for the government. We all know this. When you get like the BLM protest, or I haven't seen them connected obviously with BLM. I mean, obviously they're white dudes, but they're basically at the different agitators at these events where cities get burned down and looted and stuff. There are people there that are working the crowd. And I think that that's what these three are. They were going around. Now I don't have record on these two, Lisa and Keenan, all the places they went, but it is interesting that Keenan and Maxwell Yearick started out together at Butler and they ended at Butler. So let me show you the photo that came up of Keenan. There he is right there. And it's clearly him, though, about several years older. That is Keenan Hooper, Hooper the party pooper, as I call him. And the man there, so the context of this video here, I do link to the video clip. The woman who videotaped it said that it was after the shooting. It was about within 5 to 10 minutes of the shooting. They saw this man who apparently wasn't wearing a shirt get taken into the tent under custody. And the crowd thought that he was a shooter. They didn't know that the shooter was killed on top of the building, which I think is really interesting. Really interesting, because we were told he was immediately killed. This might play into your theory, Devin Branch, he disappeared, that the body was planted there later, because the crowd still doesn't know. And they started throwing water bottles at this guy, calling him a piece of shit, which, of course, like I said, Hooper the pooper, it rhymes. So he exits this tent, and the man who's walking out with him is, again, in my opinion, the guy that was the sniper. There were two snipers up there. The guy that was laying down, not the guy in the kneeling position, but the guy kind of laying down. Same guy. Same guy's walking out with him. So, anyways, we have a lot of doppelgangers at this event, and there's two of them. You guys have any thoughts on that before I move on?
Yeah, it's interesting. You're absolutely right about that with your comment about the crowd, because the testimony that did come out from the crowd and from the RSBN broadcasters who were on the scene, who started talking immediately after it went down, what they were seeing, were talking about shots coming from the water tower and the trees, the Secret Service,
Yeah.
looking at the trees. Yeah.
We were talking about this before we went live, that when 9/11 happened, the media, of course, showed it live, or so we're led to believe, and they were showing airplanes. Now, this has been disproven that they were actually holograms, and there are footage. One piece of video footage I have preserved on Tuck, because it's almost impossible to find. A lot of these have been scrubbed. You can see the planes going right through buildings. It's a hologram. The people on the ground were looking up, and they said, I saw missiles hit those buildings. Those were missiles. And the media was coming back saying, no, you're wrong, because you think you saw missiles, but they were going too fast. What you really saw was airplanes. And it's like, anybody can look up and tell the difference between what is an airplane and not an airplane. You can call it an unidentified flying object if you want. But what's interesting is that as the media kept pushing out there that these are airplanes, people in New York City who saw it in person, their memory started changing, and they're like, I guess it was an airplane. To this day, there are some people, they're out there. They're not public, but they've been living there for the last 3 years, however long it's been now. And they say, no, I saw what I saw. They were missiles, but they keep quiet because they're ridiculed. Well, this event's a little bit different because we're seeing the same tactics at play, where the media immediately comes out. The witnesses on the ground, they talk about it. It came from the tree line. There was one witness that said there was a shooter by the lake. I only saw one witness that said that. But they talk about the tree line and the water tower. We'll get to that tonight. The media comes out and says, no, that's not true. There was only a single shooter on the roof. They're all mistaken. And I think that if the environment were different, we didn't have social media today, because we didn't have that back with 9/11. People would go, the programming would click on and go, no water tower, rooftop, right? And we would forget all that. But there is enough people coming on social media going, no, I know what I saw. And as much as they're getting buried, people did see something on the water tower. So we will definitely, maybe we can dive into that now. Going past Hooper the Pooper. Okay, second shooter, second sniper, lines of fire. And of course, we'll be talking tonight about as many as 4 different shooters. That's the theory being put forward right now. Here's one witness talking about, I think she's like signaling down with her finger, because she's talking about there was shots fired from the water tower. She saw a shooter on the water tower. And I'm showing you kind of, you can see, it's interesting. I've noticed with the media too, a lot of them, they don't show pictures of the water tower. Like maybe they crop it off right there. They don't want you thinking about the water tower. There is one witness that did talk about something from the lake. I haven't seen much more on that, but interestingly enough, from this building to the stage is also about 148 yards. It's about the same distance. But that's not what most people are going with right now. Now, what came up when we were looking at this, John and Dove and Graham and Matthew, was this black spot up here on the water tower. If you play video footage, which again, I link it in the paper, it becomes more undeniable, because you see the black spot moving. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, it's just the 5 o'clock, shadow, right? It's evening. Or I guess it was 6 o'clock. It's 6:11, and it's sun's going down. Well, okay, yeah. So this would be the west over here, and this would be the east. But I'm talking about this little black shadow right here, which is darker than all the other shadows on here. Here's a little blown up. Now, for a few days, we didn't really have much more to go on this, but here we got, this guy did some amazing work and blew it up. And in my opinion, this is undeniable. Do you guys want to talk about this? Anybody? You can see right here, you can see a head, you can see an arm, you could see a knee coming out right here. He's kneeling, and you even see like a third tripod. Either he's very happy to see us, or this is a sniper rifle right here. You can see it coming down, and he's facing this way. You see both arms. I mean, in my opinion, this is a dude up there. He's up on
Yeah.
the cork. So he would have come up. The thing about a water tower is that they're like a hollow donut. There's a ladder on the inside. It would go all the way up to this, I guess you call it a cork. I don't know what you call it up there, like the bottle cap. And he would have come out a hatch, and he would have been standing right there where he took his shot.
Yeah, I saw.
So,
obviously the crowd, or some people in the crowd, testified that they saw the sniper shoot the guy in the water tower. There was some other photographic evidence that you could interpret it as there was a zip line attached to the water tower. That was going to be his means of escape. I don't know if he did escape or not. If he was up there, he would have been probably strapped in or harnessed in. Even though I think there's a safety railing up there, but still, I think it's sloped at that point. So, of course, you know the dangers of slopey things, right? So,
yeah.
But there's a lot of compelling evidence around that water tower. It's certainly interesting.
Well, it was a bit of a game changer when Eric Prince, and he was the founder of Blackwater. He was a ex-U.S. Navy SEAL officer. He gave this statement. Now, it was a longer statement, and I took the scissors out on this paragraph because this is what people are like, wait, what? And look what he says here. He says, the law enforcement sniper, unclear if he is USSS, in newsreels. So he's talking about the guy who took the shot in all the famous footage. He's on the slopey barn roof, was clearly overwhelmed as his face came off his rifle instead of doing his job to kill the shooter. And we've seen this where he actually pulls back and he's not looking through like he's supposed to. Clearly they were watching the shooter, but apparently have a no first shot policy. And this has been long discussed. If they were supposed to stand down until he took his first shot. The only positive action was an apparent 488-yard shot by one USS sniper, which dispatched the assassin. But after the assassin launched at least 5 rounds, wounding DJT and John Trump, and killing and severely others in the crowd. And you're like, wait a second, because the shooter on the barn was, what was that? It was about 148 yards distance. So is it a typo? Well, no, he's actually switching gears here. He's changing his thoughts. So it's in the first paragraph. So it's a kind of a sleight of hand. It's a little deceptive. He's saying that there was another sniper off camera that took a 488-yard shot and took out the actual assassin. And he's no longer at this point talking about the guy on the sloped roof. So this came up. This was the diagram that was shown right here. So if you can place this, you can see the stage would have been right here where my mouse is going around. This white building, I think, is the barn where the 2 snipers would have been that we saw. I think we're all going back. I think we're still there. We're still on. Okay. And then they were pointing over here to this slope roof over here where the apparent shooter was, a lone gunman. But there were snipers stationed way over here at the star. And it's exactly 488 yards from this star to the water tower. So those snipers, oddly enough, dropped this photo. This is the gun they were holding that shot the 488 yard, made the shot to the water tower. And so if you look at it, it's hard to tell because it's a little off angle. I don't know if you were to get right behind the gun, if you were to see it pointing at the slope roof or the water tower. But if you can kind of see where my mouse is, you see that black stem right there. That is the water tower. And this red box right down here, this is where the shooter was. So they apparently took the shot that killed the actual quote unquote assassin. And the idea is it was on the water tower. They shot over the entire crowd and got the guy up there. So the way it worked, and I'll dissect it for you. Oh, let's look at this first. So here is a before and after shot. So I know this is probably a little hard to see, but right there you can see the black spot. It's on the water tower. Afterwards, the black spot is gone. So apparently within 30 seconds to a minute time, the sun sank lower on the horizon and the shadows grew less dark in very little time. No, the sniper, the assassin disappeared. Either he got away or he was shot. but it appears as though maybe he was shot and he fell to his death. Fell like a pancake down to the ground. So this is the way, if we were to replay the footage right now, you guys can all kind of imagine the scene in your head. You've seen the footage. And I was commenting to all of you guys before we went live. It was kind of interesting that for me, when I saw that it was literally on a stage, right? You're like the fourth wall and you're looking at the stage and you're watching it unfold. And I had no idea of what the surroundings looked like. Over these last 2 weeks, we've kind of had to piece this picture together. Okay, here's the barnyard, and here's the two grandstands that you don't see on the footage, and here's this and that over there. So you hear the 1, 2, 3 shots, and then you hear a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Right? Just really quick, boom. It's almost like it's rhythmic and then it's chaotic. Well, you wait 10 seconds, and then there's another boom. That would be the 9th round, or actually it could be the 10th round. We'll discuss that. And the idea is at the end of that 10 seconds, that is the 488-yard shot. That's the theory that took out the guy in the water tower. Why am I showing you this shot? Oh yeah. Okay. So this is what we don't always see on camera. So the guy, the fire captain who was killed, is over. If you can see where my mouse is, I think he was right up here on this side of the stands. There were 2 other guys caught on camera on a different angle who was shot over here, 1 and 2, boom, boom, at the same time. And of course, Trump was down here at the stage. So there's a lot going on with this, the trajectory of these bullets. And there's been some amazing people doing detective work. Now, if I were to play you this video, you would see this red guy, the guy in the red shirt here. No, I'm sorry, it's the guy in the white shirt. He's literally falling over here. He has just been shot. And at the same second, this guy in the red hat, boom, you could actually see the blood. It's even a little red here. You see it kind of gushing out right here. Like this guy falls over and you can see the blood boosh come out of this guy. And so they're over on these stands. So that means the bullet is coming from this direction, coming down. Well, that doesn't make anything else like that, right? So there's clearly other shooters in this game. So let me show you. Okay, and then here also is this guy right here. His name is Jim Sweetland. He was an ER doctor in Angels Camp, California, a little town in the Sierras that I happen to love. I've been there many times. He was the doctor there in the Merced region. He got the blood all over his shirt. By his testimony, he said that the fire captain, he saw the hole in his head and the blood coming out, and he said he saw his brain splattered across the bleachers. He thought he was dead at the moment, but he performed CPR on him anyways, as he wanted to make sure that he could revive him. He never did. And here's what we think is going on. Maybe John, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah. So for anyone out there who isn't aware of John Collin, you can follow him on Twitter, I_am_John Collin. He is a really fascinating individual. He actually has Asperger's. He's what I would call what someone Q would say, lovingly and affectionately say, my autists and anons. This guy has, as he describes, it's a superpower for him. And so he just scours, crowdsources the footage, and he is finding all these clues. He's finding the trajectory of these rounds, and it's undeniable. When a round snaps past you, it's much different than if it's say 100 feet away from you. Like, it, right? And you know it instantly. And you're going to react different than those who are further away from you would react. So you can see that evidence of the rounds either going by people or actually hitting people in all the footage that's out there. And so the very first shot, he's actually proven, in my opinion, conclusively, that the first shot is actually 2 shots that happened pretty much simultaneously. One was slightly behind the other by milliseconds. So that shows that 2 people are communicating and coordinating, counting down to the first shot. And the first shot is the green line, and either the yellow line coming from the building or the blue line coming from the roof, one or the other. And so the first shot not only clipped Trump's ear, the first shot also went along the back row of that bleachers, right through where the Secret Service counter sniper team was set up there on top of that red barn-looking thing. And yeah, you can see that trajectory. You can see the Secret Service counter sniper team react. So you see one duck like down below the ridge line. You see the other one pop off of his scope. His gun pops in the air. He adjusts and shifts. Both of them move their weapons platforms, which is not something that a counter sniper team is going to do if gunshots start happening, but they would do it if the rounds are danger close, right? If the round whizzed by them, they would move, they would duck, they would find cover, and then try to acquire the target. So, in my opinion, it was coordinated, and they were trying to distract the counter sniper team in order to provide cover. Especially, it makes a lot of sense if the shooter is a patsy who doesn't have a whole lot of experience, isn't a pro. Like, you want to give them as much time as possible. So if the shooter is, like, say, an MK Ultra victim or something, the shooter that's supposed to take out Trump, then that would make sense. Now, the mystery here is, was it the water tower that grazed Trump's ear, or was it the building that grazed Trump's ear? And in order to know that, we have to know which way Trump was facing when he turned his head as the round went past. If he was angled to, towards the Jumbotron, then, and if he was looking at the Jumbotron, then that round could not have come from the building. It could only have come from the water tower, right? Because if it came from the building, it would have hit him in his left temple as opposed to going past his right ear. So that's kind of like the last piece of the puzzle, is to really understand which way Trump's head was actually facing when the shooting started.
John, one thing that I heard someone say at Trump's speech at the RNC, when he was telling the story, he's the one who said that he turned to look at the Jumbotron, and the shot would have to be coming straight at him.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was actually talking to my daughter about it, and she said, "No, I don't think that's the case." I went back and I listened to what Trump actually said. He said that he turned his head towards the Jumbotron, and that's when the bullet grazed him, which is good because he was about to turn a little bit more. So that makes me think maybe it was coming from the rooftop where the Crooks guy was. But then there's also the window behind Crooks, and that could be where the cover was coming from that was shooting toward the Secret Service counter snipers, and it could have been two shooters in there. Could have been one took out or hit Trump's ear, and could have been the same person that took out Crooks from behind up there.
Well, we know where the fire that was distracting the counter sniper team, or CST, was coming from, because that same round caused a reaction along the back row, and then hit the railing of that back row, along the back row of that bleachers. So I'm pretty confident that the green line was the direction of fire from, someone in the woods, up on a tree and a climbing tree stand, something like that, who was distracting their mission was to distract the counter sniper team.
I have to admit, I'm still a little confused about where they were on this chart, but the fact that those two guys, you see them get bowled over, and you can, again, play the video. The guy that's red back here, like, you can see the puff of like blood coming out. I mean, he's clearly hit, and they both fall over. And it's just like, where's the trajectory coming from? I mean, the only thing I see is, and again, John Q, I get it. Like they're trying to take out the Secret Service counter snipers. They missed. They hit these two guys. I'm just still trying to figure out where in the world in this tree line they were that they could get so high. But do you have any thoughts
think
on
that, yeah, I think they're up in a tree, a climbing tree stand. I think that they weren't actually trying to hit the snipers. I think they were trying to miss, because if you need a lone gunman narrative, you can't hit the snipers. You need to distract the snipers though, just to give the real shooter enough time to make sure he can take out the target, especially if the real shooter is not a pro. If he is a MK Ultra soy boy, you need to give him plenty of time, as much time as you can. And then once the MK Ultra soy boy is taken out, you can't fire anymore. You got to stop firing, or else the jig is up.
If I can present an alternate viewpoint here, like looking at the same evidence, looking at the same photograph here, nothing needs to change, but look at it from an alternate point of view. What changes if you take the blue line out?
That's my whole thing.
Nothing changes. Yeah.
Absolutely nothing changes. So you don't need the guy on that rooftop for the entire scenario to have played out the way it was.
Yeah, that's my whole thing on this. Like I said, I am not convinced until somebody can show me actual video footage that lines up of the guy on the roof shooting the gun. I am not convinced that he shot anything. That it's the scenario is like, for everyone out there that has ever gone past a car wash and those big old blow up guys, they're all like, waving their arms and stuff. It's basically like they set somebody there. Like, look, everybody, there's the second shooter. There he is. And if it was Maxwell Yearick, and clearly we see issues. Is it photoshopped? All this kind of stuff. There is a dead person up there. Maybe I know you, Devin Branch, you had theorized that maybe he died earlier that day. There's all these different, things out there. He died of maybe they killed him earlier that day. Who knows?
Well, I mean, yeah, that, not to cut you off, Noel, but there's too many things that don't line up with that photograph. Like there's too many inconsistencies. It doesn't look like a gunshot victim. It looks like a blunt force trauma victim from anything I've ever seen. And I've seen bodies. Like it's not pleasant anytime you have to see something like that. But none of that stuff is consistent. Like the blood drying, the coloration, the ears not matching up, the grass in the picture. It looks like a guy that got beat to death on a grassy hill somewhere, and just they photoshopped the picture onto the roof. Like I haven't seen anything yet that convinces me, other than him lying on the roof, which that photograph could have been taken the day before for all we know. We don't have any idea. Like all we have is evidence of it being there on that rooftop. So that's where I say, like, that blue line doesn't have to be there at all for this exact same situation to have taken place.
Yeah.
It's just
I'm in full agreement. Yeah.
It's just as possible that, and this is what I've said from the very beginning, and my gut feeling from day one watching everything, that this was an inside job.
Yeah. Like, and even if you're going to have a pro shooting a Trump, you still want to give that pro as much time as possible.
Absolutely.
Right. So,
and if they wanted to hit those Secret Service agents, I don't give a rip who you are. Anybody that's used a weapon on a range for more than 20 minutes could sight in well enough with little experience to hit a guy that's skylined on a rooftop. Like they weren't aiming to kill them, which again screams to me evidentiary wise that it was an inside job. They didn't want to kill those guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those are their buddies. And it's a lot harder to take a pot shot at your buddy than it is somebody that you don't know.
Yeah. And
there's no motivation for somebody to not take those guys out that's not on the team.
Right. Yeah. Furthermore, you're absolutely right. We don't
go ahead.
I would say, we don't see I have yet to see conclusive video evidence of the patsy on the roof firing his weapon. Of course, it's an AR-15. AR-15s do not have much of a kick at all. They have virtually no kick, so you can't go based on that. Like if you don't see the gun kicking, you can't go by that. The problem is that all the video evidence is so low quality that does capture him that you just can't tell either way.
But John, secondary question though, why? And this again screams media hoax, right? And because why would this kid have gone and gotten an AR-15?
Right. Exactly.
Why would he be shooting the exact same caliber weapons that are standard issues for everybody else on the team?
Right.
Like, it's much easier for me to go grab a 308 or a 22 or any other weapon. Why does it have to be the exact same caliber and weaponry that everybody on the team's using? Like,
Yeah,
and that's like the FBI director that night's statement that we don't want to release ballistic reports yet. We don't want to release the caliber of the weapon. We don't want to release any of that information. Like, they didn't want to release any of it because it's too easy for them not having their story straight yet. Who's this guy? Who's the shooter? We don't have any information on him yet. You don't have any information on a guy that you found on a rooftop with a backpack and a cell phone. Like, come on. Like, that's just, it's horse crap. Like, to be polite about it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if he was actually the shooter and he actually got shot, show me. You've already shown me a picture from the front. Show me the picture from behind where the bullet has exited, the back of his neck. Supposedly he got shot in the mouth or whatever. So show me that picture. If I were going to do this, if I was the deep state and I was going to do this, I would absolutely have the shooter, quote in quotes, be using an AR-15 because you can kill multiple birds with one stone. Trump got taken out with an AR-15. Hey, we've been trying to tell you all for years now, right, about the dangers of these assault weapons, and they would have definitely used that. For sure.
Matthew, it doesn't make any sense.
You've been really quiet over there, Matthew. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I do. Considering where the viewpoint was, I mean, when you consider that it was probably from the water tower that it went down, I want to read a Q post really quick. It's 24/20, November 5th. So remember, the 5th of November. So this is the relevance. It says, did they get the shot? Okay, so it's speaking of a different shot, but nonetheless, it's a shot. It's referenced. I pointed directly at it 3 times. I turned and double pointed just to be clear. And to me, like, I saw him pointing at the jumbotron. Okay, so this is what I'm figuring. He says, boom, something is happening. Yes, Mr. President, Anons are actively tracking. Message received. Good. That's good. Q. So to me, I mean, that just speaks to the event with the November 5th. Remember 5th November, talking about a shot pointed at particularly the jumbotron, the exact direction where the water tower was behind it. So that's what I got post 24/20.
All right.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's you're spot on there. That Q drop was proved in the past, but there's always multiple meanings. So it's fascinating that could there's definitely a lot of connections to the shooting. I pointed directly at it 3 times. There's also, did they pick up the boom, boom, boom? Like, that's the first 3 shots were, boom, boom, boom. And then Trump with 3 fights, fight. So it's fascinating. Good call out.
What Q drop was that again?
This is Q drop 24/20. I don't know the gematria on 2420, but that's the number.
All right.
I can look it up.
All right. Well,
Sorry, go ahead. No,
I'm still unclear on the order of events on the timeline. Interesting enough, Kim Cheadle, when she went before the congressional committee this week, she also, when they asked her for a timeline, she's like, well, we don't have a concise timeline of events. But here you see the FBI just taking the fire hose out on the slopey roof. And it's just like, had they done the criminal investigation? Like, how long does that take for the CSI to show up? Because what they've done now is it's not just the erasing the DNA evidence, right? Because they're saying it's Thomas Matthew Crooks without a reasonable doubt. But even just the idea of there being gunshot residue, right? Like, if he's firing rounds from this rooftop, there should be some sort of gunshot residue that they could pick up, which is gone now. So this is what I'm saying. Again, if somebody can show me where the CSI, the crime report that was taken, they were there, they're like, okay, we're all done, you can clean up now. It seemed pretty quickly that they showed up and just hosed down the whole scene to clean it up. So now we have no proof that there was ever somebody on that roof who actually fired an actual weapon that wasn't, say, blanks or something like that. So,
which is where I'm going to side with Matthew on it and say that just screams hoax. You don't want anybody to be able to find any contrary evidence to your story. So you erase everything so that there's there's nothing left for anyone to come and do forensics on.
Now hold on. I'm glad you bring that up, because another Q post here. It's 1777. It's July 31st. Think Mirror, July 13th. Okay. Take this into consideration. To the person holding the Q cutout, please post your pic or vid as POTA specifically pointed at you moments ago. We will scrub the web to find the source, no matter where posted. We are Q. So to me, it's like you just mentioned a scrubbing. We're talking about the 13th rather than July 31st. So sometimes when it comes down to like a post, the Think Mirror reference can be any part of that. So it's not as specific, but something might be worth looking into. It is 1777.
Now, before we could talk about this for the rest of the night if you guys want. If you guys want to talk about Yearick or Hooper or the the Men in Gray. We didn't get to that yet. I want to talk about the Men in Gray. But is there anything with this before we move on tonight that you guys want to that hasn't been covered, dealing with ballistics, trajectory, multiple shooters, snipers, counter snipers, anything like that?
I don't think that we can discount the fact that there was an eyewitness that did say that there was somebody shooting from the other side of the road. As that's been a theory of mine also from the beginning, that you guys can go back and either re-listen to or re-watch the material that we provided before. That
you're talking about this. You're talking about this side of the road by the lake, right?
Correct. That there was a guy that was said to have been shooting from that side of the road, and to me, if that side of the road has the best escape routes, personally, from that angle, but like,
I wonder if that was the counter sniper.
Yeah. I was just going to say that would line up with the counter sniper's position, who took the 488-yard shot.
Yep.
And from a lake, that would echo. I mean, right? I mean, you would just boom, and it would be like you would know it came from that general vicinity. It would be amplified, but maybe you couldn't pinpoint exactly where it was. But as I did point out, we saw that the sniper, what you want to call a sniper nest. I mean, on that side over there. Yeah.
Well, and another thing, you guys can recall from your memories or whatever, and you can concur or not concur with this, but that last shot has a very different sound than all of the rest of them. The crack is much different than the others. That's definitely a Barrett. It's not. That is not a 5.56 round.
And you know what was interesting too about the crowd reaction with that 10 seconds later, that just boom, that crack. It's the crowd screamed with that one. Like with the first several, it's like they just got through it and they started registering what had just happened, and there's 10 seconds of silence. And then boom, and you just hear like people.
Well, initially everybody said they thought it was fireworks, which is, I mean, the popping from a 5.56 is very consistent with like blackjacks or something going off. It's a very similar sound. So in rapid succession like that, I mean, it's right after the 4th of July. Everybody's still setting off fireworks. It's nothing to see here other than the obvious people around the people that had been shot that were like, oh my goodness, what's going on here? Like, and some very obvious veterans in the crowd that knew what was happening. It was very obvious to them what was going on in the current situation. And to me, like, my initial feeling has always been that this was an inside job. It was meant to take him out. Like, the hoax part of it all happened after the fact, and it was a cover up for the failed assassination attempt, to me.
So,
it's just
this is what I had started out talking about, that because I have many papers that I've written on different hoaxes, but maybe it's because I've seen more stuff. I'm getting older, hopefully getting wiser, starting to look at, more angles and such, that these psyops that happen, for me, it's become almost to the point of just shallow thinking to say everything is fake. Everyone is an actor. Nobody died, yada, yada, yada. That was the trouble that I got myself in with the Las Vegas shooting in 2017. And I spent like a week looking into that event nonstop, very similar to this. And then we all, of course, moved on in the world. And I actually spoke with 2 crisis actors who claimed to be there, and their stories were all whack. Now I'm thinking that they were just disinformation agents. But, I was at the perspective that nobody died, and I was very wrong about that. And the thing is with these psyops is that this is why there are multiple like layers that you got to peel back. once you understand it's an intel job, inside job, there's still, though, you peel it back and then you're like a second shooter, a third shooter, fourth shooter, water tower, white van, right? All these different things. And you see crisis actors, you see the media hoaxing us. All these different things are at play. Yes, there are hoaxes here. Yes, there are crisis actors. Yes, there are boots on the ground, but there's, you see what I'm saying? It becomes very complex to look at all the different pieces that are at play here, which of course I think that is all the fun for us. I think we really enjoy this.
Well, and the hoaxy part too that you can latch onto here, it kind of triggered my memory as Matthew was reading that last Q post, that mirror everything. Like, if you look at the hoax part of this, or what I believe to be the hoax part of this, with the official story with Crooks, and we can clearly see that it's not Crooks and it's Yearick, and all, like, the mirroring aspect of it is, coincidentally, the guy that they told us died is probably the only one that didn't. Like, if it's a hoax, he's probably not actually dead in that photograph, and they're the one that's telling us that that's the dead guy.
Assuming Thomas Matthew Crooks is even a real person, I mean, clearly it's a photo of somebody. I was wondering if it's similar to Sandy Hook. So if you guys recall, with hopefully I won't get flagged for talking about this. I think I'm okay. But when Sandy Hook happened, they brought out the Sandy Hook choir for the Super Bowl after the event, and we saw the very children that were killed, but they're several years older. And so what they did is they took photos they said it was, contemporary modern photos, and they're actually several years old, of these children. And so I wonder if it's the same thing with Thomas Matthew Crooks. Just took an old photo from 10, he could be 30 years old. They say he's 20, he could be 30 now. He could be interfaces, just doing something else. And that's something we have to look out for, because we have caught them in the past of multiple insiders, actors, so on and so forth, being at multiple different world stage hoax events. All right, so with what time we have left, we're running down on time. I'd like to talk about a few things like the AI and stuff like that. I'll just scan through this really quickly. You guys all are familiar now with this woman. They're showing this shot here on the left, but actually, I thank you, Pamela. I was able to track down several shots of her, and in every single one, she is, the poor girl, she is bumbling around. There she is in the back. She can't seem to stay with them. Here she doesn't know what to do. She's like walking in the wrong direction. This is the same woman who can't holster her gun. She looks like she just got the bad news that her two hamsters, Nappy and I don't know, whatever, they just died in a vacuum accident. Nipster and Nappy. And
to
so there's
her
that.
credit,
right.
she
so
looks like
she's
in. To her credit, she looks like she's in fight or flight mode. She has no idea what's going on. She's just, I mean, it's everything she's doing is pure instinct. She's not actually doing anything. You can look at her face, and her face is consistent with somebody that's just in flight or flight instinct mode. Like, her heart's probably going a million miles an hour. She's pure adrenaline, pure just following training, and like, she has no idea what's happening. So,
all right, I'll take your word on that. All right, and then so you guys all know Kim Cheadle by now, and why did I have this picture? Oh yeah, to show you the brilliance of the government today. How the dudes in dresses and stuff in different positions, and we can all sit here and argue about whether women should be in the military, Secret Service, or whatever, fire departments. This has been an ongoing discussion for as long as I've been alive, probably since the 70s with women's liberation. But the thing is that obviously we're seeing situations here where they need to be able to be at the same standard of men. I mean, one of the criticisms that came up is that this woman right here, I mean, she did great. She got in front of him, all that kind of stuff, but she's still shorter than him. Like, she's not even his height. His head is above her. So now he's, the tangerine tornado is like a total pumpkin shot right there. So, obviously that's something that they're going to have to deal with. Obviously our government's a joke. We can skip this. This has been all in the news. You guys know all this. Of course, this is making fun of the slopey roof. Kim Cheadle came out and said that the they didn't put anyone up there because the roof was too slopey, and they were concerned for their safety. And these guys were on a slopey roof. Of course, the White House is a slopey roof, and it goes on and on. And there's
wasn't one of the official stories that it was too hot and that's why they had to go inside?
Yes.
Could be.
Yeah, climate change. That was another reason for, Trump almost, if it wasn't for climate change, Trump wouldn't have been shot at. Yeah.
Well, have you heard the other one? It's actually due to racism, because
the roof hates white people.
No, I actually saw this. I saw this on the media. A woman was on there saying that it's proof of racism, because if it was a black guy on the roof, everybody would have apprehended him. And it's proof that you can get a white guy up there with a rifle. Nobody's going to look twice. Nobody cares, because they're racist. Everybody there was a racist. And it's proof that, because it was a white guy, racism. So I guess cool. It's global warming. It's racism. It's
the bullet was racist too. It didn't. Didn't like white people.
So this guy right here, Homeland. Benny Thompson. He's Homeland. He's a member of the House Committee on Homeland Security. He's a Democrat representative, I think, from Mississippi. And as you guys know, he tried in, I think, April-ish, tried to revoke the USSS status for anyone convicted felon, including ex-presidents, in prison. They were planning to put Trump in prison. And again, everyone out there, you could say, well, this was all staged, whatever, or it was legitimate, Banana Republic, right? And so it's kind of interesting. They wanted Trump to go to prison, have no Secret Service detail, and just, after a pixie dance in the shower room, get knifed by a homeboy. Pointing this out, that if you do a Google search on Biden's Secret Service detail, all men, in almost every picture I find, just men. And so, again, that they're claiming that, though, that's the other thing too, sexism. So it's racism, global warming, racism, sexism, everything is covered here. Proof in this incident. And
gun
of course,
control.
you have Biden, reenacting the economy constantly with his a great performance, amazing performance with his falling down. And of course, you just see men running in to get him. There's no women's Secret Service. Just wanted to point that out. I'm not the first to do it. We can skip this. And here's the men in gray. You guys want to talk about this?
Yeah, it's fun.
There's two separate incidents. This guy here, this man in the gray suits, and I don't know who the man in the gray suit who went up on the roof. John, you were talking about this earlier, but then here, interesting enough, there's this odd video footage of, I took 3 screenshots. So you see this woman here frisking this guy, and this is his car. This is right after the shooting, and the whole crowd is standing around kind of perplexed. And then you see these 2 officers walk up, and then they start searching his car. So here's one guy in a gray suit, and then this other mystery man right here in the gray suit. We don't know who he is. At least I haven't found out who he is. I guess the Men in Black today, or the new outfit, Men in Gray. Here's the famous, of course, Pac-Man map that they had a Pac-Man perimeter, which is kind of funny, right? Well, the funny guys, meme perspective. You had the exactly where the shooter was is what Pac-Man is eating there. So that's his ghost he's going after right there.
But this is another piece of non-credibility that is just insane, because the original story was that they didn't have any coverage there. And that people were so baffled that they didn't have any coverage over there. Yeah. And now no one even talks about that, because nobody wants to bring it up now.
I know.
So.
Well, let's talk about the crowd reaction. And unfortunately, I only got to cover so much. I mean, I only had so much time. There were so many pieces I was trying to put together. And what was this guy's name over here with the hat, John Q? What's his name?
Vincent Fusca.
I know you know it.
Yeah, and so he's it's interesting. Yeah.
He was he was calm as a cucumber the whole time. A lot of people are, stating that he's really JFK Jr. I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't know. But there was this really interesting woman over here in the white shirt, the black. Let's see. Let's keep going. Oh yeah, I want to talk about this. Trump's speech at the RNC. He said this, referring to the crowd. He said, when even a single bullet is fired, just a single bullet, and we had many bullets that were being fired. That's such a Trump thing to say. The crowd runs for the exits or stampedes, but not in this case. It's very unusual. This massive crowd of tens of thousands of people stood by and didn't move an inch. In fact, many of them bravely, but automatically looking for where the sniper would be. They knew immediately it was a sniper and then began pointing at him. And you can see that in the footage. And he says, you can see that if you look at the group behind me. That was just a small group compared to what was in front. Nobody ran. And by not stampeding, many lives were saved. But that isn't the reason that they didn't move. The reason is that they knew I was in very serious trouble. They saw it. They saw me go down. They saw the blood and thought, actually, most did, that I was dead. Now, I want to comment on this because a lot of people are saying that the crowd response is not realistic at all, that it's fake. And this is what I do want to point out is that I actually, let's see if I can quote from my comment down here. So, actually, let me first say what Tucker Carlson said. This is what he said up on stage at the RNC. So Tucker Carlson apparently called him within like 3 hours of the attack, and he said that I reached out to Trump within hours of that night, and what he said to me that night, having just been shot in the face, said not a single word about himself. He said only how amazed he was and how proud he was of the crowd, which didn't run. And I thought two things. The first thing I felt was, well, of course they didn't run. His courage gave them heart. A leader's courage gives courage to his people. Now, some of you are going to be like puke, right, at hearing that because you're like, oh, Trump, right? Well, I want you guys to think about it from this angle. Okay, just try to, I'm trying to look at this unbiasedly. This idea that the crowd would not run and they would just be concerned about his safety and not their own, it's going to sound ridiculous to self-serving and non-military types out there. I guess A and B, completely detached from leader loyalty relationships. But the crowd's reaction is more indicative of their perception of Trump than it may be of your own personal feelings regarding Trump. So I think we all need to recognize that in, battle scenarios, you look for your officer, you take care of your officer. If your officer's down, you go and, you take them out, right? I mean, and this is the whole thing with snipers, right? I think you had talked about this last time, John Q, that you might have, or maybe we're talking on the side, that's the thing about a sniper is that you can take out multiple people just on the basis that that they're going to try to, if that they're going to try to help each other, right? You're going to try to carry people off the stage and such. So I want to point that out, that I think in this scenario, it is very believable that these people were so concerned with his safety because they were so invested in him that they weren't like OMG and running and stampeding over people and killing each other. Now, this woman here is kind of interesting because she is right behind Trump. She's a blonde woman with a MAGA hat, a red hat. She, from the moment of the first fire, just first boom, she slinks down. You never see her again. She's gone. Now, there's a little boy right here. Looks like he could be her son, but you don't see her covering him. You don't see her pulling him down. She just ditches the little guy, goes straight down, and then eventually you see him slink down with the others. But I'm like, what is going on there? And this is the big one that a lot of people have been talking about, this mystery woman right here. And the claim has been that she is the claim is that she's Janine, how do you pronounce it? Deusseppi, the assistant director of the FBI. The thing about her is that she really does she's so calm, and she just she has a Mona Lisa smile. You could see her almost smirking, and she just picks up a camera and her cell phone and leans in to get that front row footage. And some people have speculated that, she was there to get the firsthand kill shot. And so we really don't know. Just throwing that out there. All right. Here's something that I noticed that I want to talk about before we end tonight. Was why do I have a picture up here of Garth Brooks on Jimmy Kimmel and the Legacy album? Well, a few things happened on Monday morning. Morning Joe and Jon Stewart were canceled off air, which I find super suspicious. Like, why? What does the shooting have to do with them being canceled? Well, my thought is, and I have personal experience on this, and this is where I can weigh in on this. My thought is that they were planning for him to be assassinated. And they had something lined up that they could now not fill. They had put their cards on the table. They're like, he's going to get assassinated, and we're going to have, the show on this. So what happened is that I was at the Flat Earth International Conference in 2019. I went to the conference in 2017. I had tickets to 2018. I didn't go to that one. And that one, what's his name? Something Paul. It wasn't Jake Paul. It was, you guys know who he is. He went and punked it there.
Logan Paul.
Yeah, Logan Paul. Thank you. He has a brother, right, named Jake Paul. And so at 2019, Jimmy Kimmel's crew showed up. And of course, he works for Disney. And they came in actors, and they were acting retarded. I mean, they one of them was in a cast, and he was going around like on crutches, and they were pretending to be flat earthists, and they had cameras out, and they were going up and kind of getting in people's faces and interviewing them and stuff. And my buddy Rick Hummer, I was there for the whole thing, and he caught on to, he's like, he knew these guys were a media crew, and he went and confronted them. He's like, who are you? Who are you with? All this kind of stuff. And it started escalating, and it went bad for the crew because one of them went up and groped a woman's breast, in which case then she said that she was going to sue. They brought in security and the police and so on and so forth. It just went downhill. Well, they were planning to air that on Jimmy Kimmel. They did a very, very shortened version. It didn't actually work out the way they wanted. And we are of the opinion, and in fact, I'm convinced, that they were going to air it on the night that Garth Brooks came on to launch his Legacy album. And that's a shot of Apollo 14 there. It was the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11, and they were celebrating it. And they were going to play the whole clip. They didn't play it. And in fact, they went to commercial. It was like a 20-minute commercial break. It was supposed to be or maybe 15 minutes. It was supposed to be like a 10-minute segment. They didn't air it. They had nothing to fill it in. And that's what I think happened on Monday evening. They had nothing to fill in. I think that's just super suspicious that they canceled those. Of course, there's Hulk Hogan. It does not lend an air of confidence that a wrestler came on. Of course, I have to say that when I did watch that live, and when he ripped his shirt, I did feel a sense of 80s nostalgia, oddly enough. And I think that that speech actually reflected how a lot of Americans felt that week. But it doesn't give me confidence that a wrestler who is an actor is up there talking about it. You guys can weigh in on that. But the last thing I do want to talk about was, this is interesting here. Now, we couldn't find if this tweet by Sheila Jackson Lee is legitimate. She was tweeting during the Trump speech at the RNC, and apparently one was floating around where she said, "I'd rather die than listen to another minute of the speech." Well, interestingly enough, she died. She dropped over the next morning. She died. So is this did they scrub this, or is this legitimate? We don't really know. But however, it is interesting that there is a picture there of her with a pedo ring. That's undeniably a pedo ring. She liked little boys. Hate to say it, that's what it is. No mistake about it. So you're seeing some interesting things happening the week afterwards, where she dies, pedo lady, and then of course
real quick, Noel, on her during Cheadle's testimony, she confirmed that congresswoman, I forget her name now, was very close to and very heavily engaged in oversight of the Secret Service.
Yeah, Sheila Jackson. And I put that right here, that's exactly what she said. So it is interesting that, is there like some sort of revenge happening? Are they taking hits? We don't really know, but there's some odd things happening. So you guys are all familiar with this by now. Joe Biden's very strange signature that doesn't match up with his other executive orders that was put on his resignation letter. So, Joe Biden, he's like, I'm running. I'm not dropping out. He gets COVID. He goes away for the weekend. And this letter shows up on Sunday with a signature that's clearly not his. And to make it even odder is that I think it was like an hour later, that he then announced, and of course that was dropped on Twitter of all places, the first time in American history that a president has resigned on social media instead of his own website. You know, it could have been whitehouse.gov or whatever. And then he within an hour, this came out where he shows better times with him and Kamala there walking through the garden with her serial Joker laugh. And he basically said that she's going to be in the running. So much for, I don't know, caucuses, primaries, usual run-of-the-mill democratic process, I guess. She's in it. There was a coup. She's in it. And then something started interesting happening this last Monday for all of you paying attention. I don't know who dropped the story first, Charlie Kirk. And I really like Charlie Kirk. I know we're all distrusting of everybody out there. But I like Charlie Kirk, and he came out with this, his sources in Vegas, saying that POTUS was apparently rushed to the hospital, but en route, they had to clear the streets with Las Vegas Metro. But on the way, they canceled that apparently, and they flew him out back to Massachusetts. They flew him to John Hopkins, which is in Delaware. Excuse me, it's in Delaware where he's from. And then of course you see Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene, and I just nabbed theirs. There's a bunch of others. They're all coming out the same day, Monday, saying, you know, what's going on with Joe Biden? Is he alive? Can you show proof of life? So it was later that night that we see Kamala. She's given her first speech as the as a person running for president, and Joe Biden calls in, and this is the actual conversation. Pseudo Joe says it's mutual, and Kamala says, "I knew you were still alive. You're not going anywhere, Joe." Like, how self-conscious is this? And then Pseudo Joe says, "I'm watching you, kid. I'm watching you, kid. I love you." And then it continues on, and she says, "I love you," but then it continues on. Kamala says, "Joe, are you watching? Can you hear us clapping? Can you see it?" And he says, I'm watching. And she says, "I knew it." Well, this guy named Matthew Sabia, he's an IT man. He decided to do a live demonstration. He did it all on video. There's a link. You can see it, where he revealed with 98% certainty that was AI, that it was AI Joe Biden. So for whatever reason, we don't really know what was going on there. If Joe Biden is dead, if he's still alive, if there's some other Joe Biden actor now, we really don't know. I guess it was 11 Labs. Now they what was it? They came out immediately, and they switched it now that they said that there's only 2% chance that it was AI, but we think that, you know, they basically had to go in and fix that to cover their tracks. And you'll like this, John Q. If you want to talk about Q Post 24 or even Matthew, anybody?
Oh yeah. This one. So the Biden he dropped out of the race exactly 107 days before the election. And of course, you know, with the rules of gematria, you drop the 0, so you get 17, and Q is the 17th letter of the alphabet. But he also dropped out 24 days after the debate debacle. And so if you look at Q Post 24 here, it says any person making statements they will not be seeking re-election was put in submission. For the betterment of the country, not all will be prosecuted, and all will do as told. You will see more of this occur, not normal yet, disregarded, and even on the D side. So yeah, very interesting.
So just for everyone out there, and I really want to stress this point. I am not an Anon. I'm not associated with Q. John Q is, Matthew is, Graham, maybe he's on. I'm not really quite sure where he's at. And Dove and Branch over there is really looking into all this stuff now. But here's the thing. I hear this all the time. I am whatever side of the fence I fall on, I am legitimately convinced at this point. There's too many coincidences for this not to be true. I'm legitimately convinced that there is a white hat narrative versus the black hats. Now, what happens is that people come to me all the time. I covered this like 5 years ago when I first went after not John Q, QAnon, and I, said this is all, was it Operation Truth, straight out of the Bolshevik Revolution.
Operation Trust, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Operation Trust, yeah, and I covered that earlier in this paper. And the thing is that they'll say, well, it's the left and right side. It's the white, it's the right, the white side of magic and the dark side of magic. It's just like the Wizard of Oz, right? The Glinda, the good versus, the Witch of the East and the West and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, okay, that's actually a pretty insightful and provocative thing you just said. Like, that has some depth to it. But usually the people making that case, they just want to shut up and they want it to go away. They're like, no, you just need to understand it's two sides. It's white and black magic. I'm like, okay, you just said something really, like, I want to dig into that. Usually the crowd, they're like, no, we don't want to talk about that. It's like, well, why did you bring it up?
The wisdom
it's like, why did you
out of their mouth?
Right. It's like, well, clearly you don't believe what you're saying, because if you truly believed it, you would look further into it. You're just saying that to sound intelligent and to make this conversation go away. I want to look into that further. I am under the impression that there is a left and a right, that they are literally at war with each other. And I think we are seeing this war manifest in real time. Now, we can all sit here and discuss whether the white hats win this war, if it's going to be better on the other side or something far worse. We could all have that discussion. But I'm starting to put these Q posts into my papers, not because I'm an anon, I'm not associated with Q. I'm seeing too much to be coincidence, too much happening. Call it predictive programming, fine. It's happening. Like, the things they're talking about, it's actually coming to fruition. So I think that that's something we should all, instead of just snubbing it because we're too cool for school, I think that's something we should all pay more attention to. That's just my 2 cents. I think I went through my paper here, so I'm going to hand over to you guys. We went a little bit over time. We can keep going another 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever you guys want. What did I miss? What would you like to highlight more? Anything, any other insight you have? Handing over to you guys. Graham, you've been kind of quiet over there. Matthew, you haven't said a whole lot.
Yeah, I don't remember if we touched on this. We touched on this last time. I think we did, but if we didn't, I want to point it out that there's just another thing with the Q drops and how Q plays into all this is Q post 2190, which was September 17th of 2018, and in that Q drop, an anon had posted an image of Trump with his fist up in the air, and had said, "Q, you were right all along. Emmys, red carpet, Keck, where we go when we go all." And Q had replied to that anon, and he said, "Anon's picked up on the carpet bombs for you and you alone. Fight, fight, fight." So here again, we have a Q drop, Trump with his fists in the air, and the words "fight, fight, fight" in it. So there's a lot of stuff to these, and it's really fascinating when you start going down the Q rabbit hole. There's absolutely too many coincidences for it to be coincidence. I mean, you only need, like, I forget the number of coincidences you need for it to be mathematically impossible, but it's not that many. And so, part of my research is, I've discovered through my research into the Q drops and everything that the Q drops can be cross-referenced very much like you can cross-reference scripture. It's basically like almost the same kind of method. And then what I really found fascinating was I found that I could cross-reference, and I show this in my articles over and over again, that you can cross-reference Q drops with scripture and vice versa. So like a Q drop, maybe the date timestamp or something, or the post number the numbers will match a scripture passage that is talking about the same thing. And it's really, really fascinating. So
has anybody here ever looked into the Bible code? Has anybody done
yes,
because that stuff, it has predicted some pretty wild stuff in life. And there's so many names that pop up in there, dates that pop up in there. It's really crazy. And I haven't delved into it extensively, but the little bit of research I did do into it, it was this is really hard to disprove. And I wonder if there's some connection between Bible code and Q, just with the amount of coincidences that there are. And I don't know if anybody in this room believes in coincidences anymore. I know I sure don't, but it's almost too much. But one of the things I think that we didn't cover a whole lot is the whole Biden AI voice thing. And it just strikes me that it was no secret to anyone that the two of them did not get along. Like they didn't have a great relationship as a president and vice president go. The two things she was responsible for, she botched horribly, which was the border wall and the Ukraine thing. And she almost single-handedly caused the war between Ukraine and Russia, and stating that, oh, we're going to let Ukraine into NATO. And I think
because Russia is that big country over there, and the Ukraine is that little country, and the big country is taking over the little country, and that's just wrong.
Yeah, big bad no. But yeah, so she single-handedly did the one thing that no politician worth their grain of salt should ever have done, and was like, oh yeah, we're going to let this country that there's long-standing agreements that they won't go into NATO. Yeah, we're going to bring them into NATO, in which, I mean, it opened up a whole can of worms. Whether it was staged or not is irrelevant. Like, she was the one put in charge of it on purpose to make her look bad. And now we're supposed to believe that exact same person is now fully capable and the best candidate with no elective process whatsoever to get her there. It's just, it's too unbelievable.
Nor did she ever show up to the border wall to this day, to my understanding.
Yep. I don't think she's not going to be the candidate. I don't think.
You don't think so?
I don't. Yeah, I think there's a lot more crazy stuff that's going to happen.
Well,
this is like Days of Our Lives. I mean,
yeah,
they're doing this in stride, and they're just gaslighting. Like, it's been commented for go back on when the Trump-Biden debate happened, and going into it moments before, you have the liberal media coming out and saying that if you think that Biden is not up to par, then you're like just a total idiot, right? And then as soon as the debate, even during the debate, they threw him under the bus, they attacked him, all this kind of stuff. They wanted him gone. And then they were like all terrified of Kamala coming in. But as soon as Biden stepped down, they're like, now Biden is the greatest guy ever. Kamala is like your everybody's favorite aunts, right? You just why do you want her as president? Because she's like the aunt that comes over at Christmas and gives you gifts. She's like,
yeah, that's definitely the qualifying candidate for the person I want running the country. My aunt who brings over stuff at Christmas time. Well, yeah, you're qualified. You're in. I don't know why I wouldn't vote for you.
What I'm saying is that it seems to be all in stride, and I'm agreeing with Graham that something else is probably going to happen, where then they're going to somehow turn on Kamala and they're going to introduce somebody else.
Yeah.
Well, my initial theory when I heard this was like, okay, because I think I commented this in the Discord, and shameless plug for the Discord. If you guys aren't part of it, you should be, because this is where all the fun discussions take place.
True.
We only have so much time here, but we debate this stuff endlessly on Discord. So, my initial thought, and I think I put it on Discord, was it's too convenient, right? Like, so everything since the Trump assassination, it's like they're just folding their cards.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they have nothing else. Legitimately, name a name other than Kamala Harris that has a prayer of 107 days of building a campaign, transferring financial money to her. Like, she's the fall guy. Like, she's the guy that's going to take the hit and be the unelectable person, and then they don't have to deal with her again. She's gone. They can build their next campaign for it's like they're doing everything possible at this point to hand Trump the election and just be like, we don't have anything. We have nothing, guys.
I will say this too, that it seems like I've gotten people are getting wind of the fact that very few people actually want to be her VP. And the reason being is, I think that maybe they see they see what's coming, that she's going to be taken out, and so if their name is attached to her, their political career will be over as well. So,
might be some foreshadowing there. I think you might be onto something there, Graham.
It would be fun to see Trump beat Hillary again.
See, I think the Hillary card's played out. I
No, I know
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense. I agree.
I think
But-
it's a fun
Yeah.
meme to play around with, but
Yeah.
But
she's
none of it
done
makes
politically.
sense, really. So
Well,
I
there is
just-
a theory
she-
that they would be sneaking her in or somebody in. And the other thing about that, when it comes down to Hillary, is there's another subset where there was like a rule that if you are a politician in the running, you can't be arrested.
She did put out a new book recently. She's been appearing more and more on, I don't know if this is the real Hillary or not. I actually think that the real Hillary was arrested. There's footage of her being arrested. I think she's been taken out, removed. If she's still alive, she's in Gitmo. But I think it's a lot of this that we're seeing. There are real things that happen. This is a real war. A lot of people say, oh, if you follow the Q drops, you must think that it's entirely a movie and it's entirely scripted. No, Q also says this is not a game, right? So Q also says that the Patriots are in control. Now, you can be in control of a battlefield, but the enemy can still get off shots. And that's especially if the enemy is backed into a corner and is desperate. If the enemy is desperate, they will do desperate things. And shooting at President Trump was a very desperate thing. It tells me that they don't have any other cards to play. It tells me that they know that if he gets back into the White House, they are done, right? Because you don't play that desperate card, because if it fails, that's it. So,
well, is there any on the Q side of things, something that I think would be fascinating for you to look into down this topic trail is like a third reference, as in like Joe drops, Kamala drops, who's the third guy type situation, because I think that if whoever gets picked as her VP is going to be who they actually want to be president.
Yeah, that would make sense.
There is a drop that talks about, how do you sneak one in, and it talks about her, she. Now it could be talking about Kamala. I don't know. I feel like if you're a good writer, and this, you're gonna bring back the early story protagonist towards the end.
Yeah.
So that's why I think that potentially we're going to see Hillary making a play, and somehow Kamala is removed and Hillary is put in her place.
That's why I wanted to play the let's theorize card or whatever, because I couldn't find any legal definition that says, okay, so let's theorize Joe Biden's he's gonna get announced that he's passed away from COVID or whatever else in the next week or so, right? That happens. Kamala gets to essentially pick her VP. She gets to basically nominate somebody and say, this is who I want to, out of a pool of endless possibilities. It doesn't have to be somebody that's currently serving anything. She can just pick somebody. And I said, what's to stop her from just being like, hey, I like Barack, I want him as my VP?
Yeah.
What's to stop that from happening?
Yeah, nothing. I don't think so. And in fact, the House has already introduced articles of impeachment on Kamala, because they're basically saying, you've been lying to us this entire time about Joe Biden's mental and state and his health.
In that very scenario, if she's impeached and he's not alive, it's the Speaker of the House that becomes president.
Yeah. Someone in the chat said it's Q post 4014, change of batter coming. That's the one I'm talking about. Where the Q also talks about that. Actually, I'm going to bring that post up and quote it, because it's highly applicable to today. So it's number 4.
It's pretty long, but do you mind if I do the honors?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So why are they pushing back the Democratic convention? COVID-19 concern or strategic for last-minute change? Change of batter coming. Why was she saved from officially announcing? Why was she reserved for a last-minute change? How do you attempt to sneak one in? How do you attempt to ensure victory? Adopt national vote by mail. How do you convince American it was legitimate? Release fake polls indicating favorable leads in swing states. How do you harm opponents' accomplishments? RE, economy, unemployment, ... quite a few dots there. Probably is something. How do you terminate opponents' highly effective rallies? How do you shelter a Democratic lead candidate from embarrassing debates and or rallies? How do you shelter Democratic corruption, RE, FISA, Russia, Flynn, etc., from reaching the mainstream? How do you extend the trade negotiation deadline with China? How do you limit tests in test is in kill brackets. Constitutional rights of people. How do you provide cover for state govs to adopt new voter laws? How do you effectively control the population? How do you expand big tech overreach, re tracing or privacy issues? How do you fix Killbox taxpayer bailout and Killbox? The long broken economies of California and New York. How do you enrich select people's companies by promoting a solution to a global crisis? How do you keep people living in fear and isolation in order to accept the above? Define insurgency. How do you accomplish all the above? Q.
Yeah. So what's interesting, really interesting about this Q drop is obviously there are some things in here that applied to 2020, the 2020 election cycle. But there's also now things that are hitting again with this, what's been going on here. So it starts off with, why are they pushing back the deconvention? Well, guess what? They just pushed back the deconvention. It says COVID-19 concern or strategic for last minute change, ? Well, we just had a COVID-19 concern with Biden. And because of that COVID-19 concern, now we have had a last minute change. Next line, change of batter coming. Why was she saved from officially announcing? Kamala Harris never had to officially announce. In my theory, if they bring Hillary back, she'll never have to officially announce, right? Why was she reserved for a last minute change? How do you attempt to sneak one in? Like, they're sneaking one in right here. If it's not Hillary, even if it's just Kamala, like, she did not receive a single Democrat primary vote. Like, I don't know how Democrat voters can. In fact, actually, there was a BLM. BLM just actually wrote a letter to the DNC, scourging them for, not holding to the democratic values and just, installing Kamala.
There are a lot of Black, like African American people that are really upset right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just another flushing their thought process and their rights out the window again, and they're really upset about it. Like, I've got a guy at work that he's a Democrat, and he's like I don't even want to vote. Like, I feel like this is the biggest slap in the face ever again, that my vote just doesn't count.
Yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. And the drop continues. How do you attempt to ensure victory? Well, assassinating Donald Trump probably would have ensured victory. Either your Democrat candidate wins, or your chosen rhino, uniparty Republican wins. So, that's how you could ensure victory, would just assassinate Donald Trump. And then it goes on. How do you shelter lead candidate from embarrassing debates and or rallies? Well, one of the things that is embarrassing for them with the rallies is that when Trump has these massive outdoor rallies, in New Jersey recently, he had an outdoor rally. He drew 107,000 people. Mm-hmm. Indoors, you're limited to like 25 or so thousand. He's still filling them up. But right now, the Secret Service is not allowing him to have outdoor rallies because of this. So again, like,
convenient.
Yeah. So there's so many things in this Q drop that hit back in 20. Of course, how do you shelter the lead candidate from embarrassing rallies in debates and rallies in 2020 was obviously the COVID hoax, right? And Joe Biden, didn't have his rallies. If he did, there were 6 people in circles 6 feet apart, and that was that. So yeah, it's fascinating how the Q drops. Q's even said this: drops have multiple meanings. And
do you think that Kamala and Trump will ever have a debate?
Man, I hope so, because it would be hilarious. It would be so entertaining. I would definitely.
I feel like they'll push it off due to security reasons or what. Like they don't have one. There's not enough time for her to prepare. They'll come up with whatever excuse, but they absolutely cannot put her. Which is why I think that, again, Graham, I think is onto something with they're going to push something here. We were all saying for ages, and I remember specifically stating it, that we've all, I think Noel even included, were saying, man, it's really quiet for a political season.
I was stating like about 2 months ago, going like, man, this 2024 is turning out to be a really slow and kind of boring and quiet year. And then boom, it just from the debate going forward. Well, actually, no, I should say, because when, with the trial and all that, it just started picking up speed, and here we go. So I think it's going to be full speed into November. Mm-hmm. And we're going to, this might be a kind of
should we play election year bingo? Like, is that a thing? Should we start that?
So So, and again, I just want to state, I just want to state to everyone out there that, however you feel about politics, like the fact is that we live in this world. This is a reality, and it is happening before us. And I have committed this year. It's an election year. Like, this is the Olympics of politics. Whether it's all scripted or whatever, it's happening. And so I want to. We're going to continue having this conversation. I hope all 4 of you will continue to come back. We'll get the gang together every maybe month or so, or every few weeks, and just talk about the most recent events happening. And yeah,
with everything in the pace that things are happening, it'd be impossible to keep track of everything if we do a month.
Well, yeah, I mean, like this paper, I devoted a week of. I said when this happened, I'm like, okay, I'm going to devote 1 week of my life to writing this, and I knew I had to do it that week, or it was never going to happen, or it'd be very different. And then, we got to the week, and I'm like, oh man, I guess I'm devoted another week. So I spent 2 weeks working on this, and I think I'm kind of, unless some really good information comes out, I'm moving on to other things, or else, I'll never get pulled away, right? Because I know that this is going to keep going and going and going.
I did move on to whatever happens this coming week too.
I know, right? So
I think with the predictive programming or whatever, I think Graham is on to something there. Like, something's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no way they're putting her on a stage. Like, and even in John just saying the fact that the Q post had said, and again, I'm not real huge into this stuff, but just little things that click in my brain. Just with saying, like, how do you keep her off of a stage, right? Like, how do you keep her from debates? How do you, like, they're going to have to do something. They can't put her on a stage with Trump. He'll tear her apart. Like,
well, my suggestion is if that Kamala Harris does make it to the White House, that for White House press secretary, we take the entire cast and crew of The View and we just move their studio to the White House. And so we can just tune into The View every day as they dissect all the gossip of.
She'll fit right in. She can sit with them.
I know, right? It'd be
full debrief. Like, it.
Yeah,
why
perfect.
not?
Perfect. And yeah, so you know what? Let's go ahead and close up for the night. This has been. I really enjoyed this, and again, we're going to do this again. Thank you guys for being patient while I went through this paper, and I really wanted you guys. I invited you guys all on to give your added commentaries. I went through it. But we're gonna do this again if you guys are willing. I'm gonna bring you guys back on, and the next big thing, we'll just come on and talk about that. Anybody want to close with anything? Any last thoughts before?
I would like 2 things really quick. For the resources, one of the things we mentioned is how there's like an connection between the WWE and like politics and whatnot. Go to Victor Kilo Milo VKM. Okay,
I want to get him on.
VKM.com. Okay, so for VKM. And the other thing, you had mentioned John Titter. Who was the guy who interviewed him?
Oh, shoot.
The YouTube video, we mentioned that earlier.
I don't remember who interviewed him, but if you want to see a real cool breakdown on John Titter, you can go. There's a YouTube channel called the Y-Files, and he did a really extensive breakdown on John Titter.
Okay.
Like,
the only reason I bring that up is because, for whatever reason, whoever it was, I can't find anything on that guy. I remember it was just somebody specific. It was
he was the guy from Coast to Coast, wasn't he?
Yeah, but I can't find the name of the guy, which is
Lou
interesting.
Dobbs.
They scrub it. No,
well,
not that one. So anyway, it was just something to consider. If they're scrubbing it right now, maybe there's something into that.
No, I didn't mention that when I did talk about Hulk Hogan. I did put it in my paper. I did bring up that there's this kind of developing idea that, I mean, everybody knows WWE used to be the WWF. That's the worldwide, the World Wrestling Federation. I guess it's what, Enterprise now, or whatever. I don't know what the E's for. Because I don't watch wrestling. That it's scripted, it's acting, whatever. But there's a really interesting kind of theory developing that I think it really has my interest. The idea that these wrestlers are actually intel guys, and that they were there kind of for a sting operation to kind of infiltrates the I guess the world that surrounds wrestling, which is a bunch of scuzzbags and other kind of individuals, trafficking rings and stuff. I think it's a really interesting idea that a lot of these wrestlers were actually intel guys working for the government. So, but anyways,
Matt, it was Art Bell.
Yeah. I was going to say Art Bell. I knew Art Bell, but all right. So let's go ahead and close for the night. Thank you everybody for being here. And again, we'll do this again. Good night, everybody. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Hopefully it was informative for you. And oh yeah, a couple things. Read the paper, pass it around. Hope you guys enjoy it. Hope it's informative for you. Keep it in your files, because we lose videos all the time. Tom, I think the reason I write is because I think it's gonna be a lot longer lasting than YouTube videos, which can get scrubbed much easier, whereas all these files can get passed around a little bit easier than PDFs. Also, everybody you see here, Matthew Graham, John Q, Devin Branch, they are all from the Tuck Discord community. I love this community. And I'm going to be doing more and more shows like this. We're going to do topical shows where I'm going to bring people from the community in. And so I encourage everybody to come into our community. Join us on Friday nights at 7 p.m. It's not recorded. It's just a private get together. We have every Friday night for 2 hours from 7 to 9. Everybody here shows up most weeks. I know Grandma's there every week. And come on by, say hi to us, and join us. Join us. And good night, everybody.
Those are some of the best times.
Shalom.
Yeah, I love
Shalom.
it. Yeah. I will say quickly, because Graham, you said that. There has been so many weeks where I'm just like, I wish I recorded that, because the conversations are so good. And I think they're good because people know it's not being recorded, and they just come in and they just open up and share about their lives and other things like that. But it's so good. I'm like, man, I wish that was recorded. That would be such a good YouTube video. So guys, come by, join us. See you this Friday or any other Friday. Good night, everyone.
Good night.